So it's unfortunate.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Today is August 19th. October 19th. And we're at our 1 o'clock afternoon session, and our first item up on the agenda is an update of our county wildfire protection plan draft. Stephanie Nelson and Chief Benita. Steph, I can't open it. It's too big of a file, man. What did you do? Put a bunch of stuff together?
Well, here's some good news for you. We talked a little bit about this before you walked in. For the most part, most of this is the same as the 2014 update because a lot of stuff just hasn't changed. What has changed in this document, and which is what loads it up so heavily, is we have for the last 2 or 3 years been doing a lot of work with our lands committee, assigning assessment, working with all our jurisdictions, with all the people at the table, coming up with what our county looks like in terms of wildfire risk. And so we've done some massaging, we've changed the boundaries, we've really taken a good hard look based on a whole lot of data, including all of the assessments that we've been doing for the last 5, 6 years. So all of that piled up came up with all of these maps that you can see on this link, showing you really where we think risk exists and at what level here in the county. We've added an additional category because we felt there was some in between based on a number of different factors. And so what you're getting in front of you on this update, which is the primary change that has occurred, which is we are saying, look, we know more, we have more population, we have more structures, we have more changes to these areas. And we're saying, with the best of all of our resources, that this is the assessment that should be provided in these particular areas. And so that's really kind of the nutshell. It's really not anything radical.
So did you include like Big Creek and all of it?
All of it, the
Good.
entire
Well,
county.
It's trying to download it, but it hasn't got it done yet, so I'm working on it.
And germane to Doug's question before we started here, yeah, you don't have to sign it today. You know, this is not time sensitive, but this is the draft that was given to the state, to the feds as part of our emergency plan. And so I have always considered this a living document. We update it when we think we need to. When something new comes along, we add to it. It is a formality, to be honest with you. Most people don't open. You know, whether it used to, it was on a binder on somebody's shelf and nobody looked at it. And then we've always kept it updated on our county website. You can go under community and Firewise and the old one's sitting there. And I don't know how many hits it got, but I'll bet you only when it was absolutely necessary. It is not really a resource that these guys use on a daily basis. But it is a requirement, and Juan knows about that.
Well, and doesn't it kind of give you direction on where to concentrate your efforts? And
Well, it does. Well, I already know that. And the team already knows that. This is just documentation of what the team knows.
okay.
And so, yes, it's referenced in every grant that I write. It says, well, on page 79, you will find details about this geographic area, which is a location of the proposed activity.
Did you have any stuff down in my end of the world?
Oh, yeah.
Smith's Ferry?
Well, we have a grant coming in now that's going to hit right at the South Lake Cascade. That grant's been approved. The MOU's being signed, the details, you sign the MOU, the details are happening. That's all great in that area. High Valley has work that's being done and proposed down there over the next year. Smith's Ferry is a little bit challenging because there's not as much private ground there. And so, we've done a project down there before along Packer John. And so, yeah, no, it covers your area exactly the way that it does. We know we have challenges out at Clear Creek. We know we have movement on the forest to propose projects that are out at Clear Creek, which is going to open the door for us to go back in there because we know we have a problem there. And so that's identified in this document.
So is this all up to date?
All of the maps.
Like the graphs and everything?
Well,
Does Mark Wood still sit though?
no, those are not.
No.
We stumbled this year along with everybody else. on our plate this year. That's why it says 2019, really not 2020. The geographic areas are up to date. We were able to get those in before things went wonky. But as far as managing all the rest of it, we've been working very independently this summer. And we have not updated the majority of that, which is why I say it goes back to 2014, with the exception of the part that really anybody cares about, and that's the geographic assessments for wildfire risk. And those are all the pretty maps that are included down there that are so heavily weighted on the size of this document. Anyone can talk to you about why it's important that we even put this together and filed it this year.
Go ahead.
So it's more important than ever this year because of, well, actually the last couple of years, because of the all hazards mitigation plan. And because we've never had a fire component within the all hazards mitigation plan. It actually left money on the table that we were able to ask for interior work, like I explained earlier this morning. What this does is it shows those hazard areas specific and not just specific to the emergency management office or a wildland mitigation strategist. It's also all of the stakeholder agencies input in the fire working group. So what that allows for, it gives us a lot of strength when we put those grants in or future grants in through IDL or any other of those funding mechanisms for interior work that are not adjacent to state or federal lands that have projects. We can build our own projects essentially within the interior that would just be specific to areas of the county. One thing that's nice about our plan is everybody in the state is trying to model how we do our plan through the fire working group because it's so precise in how we have those polygons set up. It's not such a huge 50,000 degree view. It's really on land, it's on the ground view. And we were able to take those and really split those big polygons that we had before, make them into smaller polygon geographical areas and break down whether they were really high hazard or low hazard or a moderate hazard for defendability. So what this does is it solidifies that, and we were able to add that into the document as an appendix, and it's referenced within a one-page. You may see it within the all hazards plan to reference that appendix, and then that was all we needed to suffice for any funding mechanisms as we move forward. And that's the biggest component I'm excited about because we've never had it in the all hazards mitigation plan. And because we've added it this time, IDL's already approved that. And actually it's Tyre, who's one of the IDL officials up north. He went through it, approved it with the plan. So he'll know as he sees those, it's already within our all hazards mitigation plan for those funding mechanisms. And potentially could offer a more money than we've ever gotten before for work within the interior and help our wildland fire mitigation strategists in doing some of that work we need to do the interior, because we do have some problem areas in each of the fire districts and in the outside of each fire districts that aren't adjacent to those state or federal lands that we really need to start working on.
One of the things that we do plan, hopefully this winter, we're maybe can do a little more meeting. We want to update a lot of those other segments that we aren't using on a daily basis, but still need to be updated. We went after the critical need, and the critical need was to make sure that our assessments were correct and that they were based on the best information that we had available. And so that's the big change in this document from what we submitted before.
So Steph, do you also get notification or somehow where you can affect the maps of places that have been logged in the last year or two or three? I mean, is that information updated?
Well, we do actually receive that information in because we do have some land managers that are involved plus CIPLAs on the board, and they're one of the primary folks that input on what the assessment looks like. And of course, they keep track of that better than anyone. And so they're one of the stakeholders in this group that put this information together.
It would just be really cool to be able to look at it from 50,000 feet and show this was harvested in 2008 and 10 and 12. And your projects are here and here to see more of how much acreage total we were actually
Well, wait,
working with
those
every year.
numbers are available. And
I know I get something from the Forest Service on that, but
And they're utilizing, SIPA keeps track of it as well. But it's sort of interesting because all the work, I've got 15 years of mitigation work in. And I throw that up on the map where you can actually see the whole county at once. And I gotta get out my magnifying glass to see where the work has been done. It's very depressing. Even though, you can see there's large spaces when you're sitting next to the project. You can say, well, hey, this is really a large impact. But from up there, it's almost no impact at all. And you think, wow, goody gutty. We didn't really do what we thought, but we did. It's just that, to Juan's point, he's saying, hey, look, we're taking a closer look at things so that we have more information and knowledge, so that when it comes time to tap into these other funding sources and start looking at areas that have not been treated because they aren't in the right place, they have the data to back it up to say, hey, you know what, this is high risk, this is an area of concern and worth, funding.
Is there anything on GIS that would be like a map or something, that Kara could create something that would be usable?
Well, these are, they're,
Everything's in electronic format.
the only thing that we're really cautious, we're not cautious with the hazard areas, we share that regularly. We're a little more cautious with the individual structure assessments because we've always been concerned about privacy and, the impact that an assessment could have if it were common knowledge to the public, to real estate agents, to insurance agents, to, other. So anyway, we've been very cautious about how that data is shared, but it's been utilized effectively in many cases with both forests when they're trying to get their above base funding, when they're trying to spread their wings in their NEPA process. They take all of that into consideration. So the county's been an excellent cooperator in that situation because we've been able to say, hey, look, this is what you're dealing with in terms of assets in your area that you're looking at. And it's been really helpful on almost every occasion.
well, and I think we're finally seeing the day too where the insurance companies are coming on board with this, and the fact that, we're not gonna insure your house until you come in and do X, Y, and Z to mitigate all this brush or timber, whatever. And now that's all coming to fruition for a lot of people. Hey, I've got to do something like now or they're going to cancel my insurance. And I think that's the way it's supposed to work. To me, whether or not they get it done is another story.
Does this speak to anything? So on the all hazard mitigation plan, I saw that there was some information to help inform planning and zoning on where housing should occur or what the higher risks were for potential development. Does this dig further into that or?
So when you're doing those plan unit developments with multiple houses, we have ordinance already or an addendum already in place with the comprehensive plan that P&Z is supposed to review, and they're supposed to have a professional go out and assess that PUD prior to, and then come up with a mitigation strategy. And then not only just a mitigation strategy, but could continuing effort through like a 10-year period.
So Juan, who's doing that? You guys or staff?
Well, the fire plan is a requirement.
Yeah. Who's
And
doing the work though? Who's actually
I
doing it?
just did one. It's not really the business I necessarily want to be in, but I did it because it needed to get done and I thought it was relevant. We had a little tour on Garrett. We went out and we took a look at what was going on out on that particular project. So it was a great opportunity. SIPA was there as well. So it was a real great conversation. And then that falls into the plan. The plan goes to planning and zoning. And the ideal is that that's utilized to help with some of these strategies in terms of figuring out whether things have been created to result in a positive Firewise community. And so John Lillihog does quite a few of them. There are others, that's usually who I point to. If he has time, that's usually who, sizes them up.
And these, you guys get paid to do this, right? It's part
If
of
you do the fire plan, yes.
if you actually write it up and do all that.
It's private industry, yes.
So there's some more jobs.
Well, you could say that, but I'm not sure anybody gets to charge enough to pay for the time that it takes to do that. But to me, I look at it almost more of as a community service. Quite frankly, since we first came up with the idea of doing this and brought it to planning, zoning, and then to the commission, what we envisioned was that there was going to be more information available to make these good decisions. As you know, there's a ton of stuff that comes in whenever a PUD is proposed or any kind of sizable development. And you're right, hundreds and hundreds of pages, right? And it is really difficult to determine the value of that. But the reality is that think about a world where every time planning zoning was ready to talk about this fire plan, they ask a representative from the working group to come in and sit down and talk about it. Or they bring somebody in, you have this basically advisory group in the fire working group where almost everybody at the table is qualified to talk about these projects. Maybe start encouraging that kind of participation. Bring in one of the individuals that has been involved in this planning and talk about it, make it part of that process. So we don't end up with subdivisions that don't make sense. I have a big general meeting with several landowners at Jug Handle tomorrow night. Jug Handle is one of our craziest subdivisions in the county. And it's something that the chief has spent a lot of time in his career working with, trying to, identify risk and deal with things in that area. I've done a project there in '09, which is not one of my best projects. Next door at Jug Mountain, they're doing a ton of work. They're involved now and also in this project moving forward. The reality is that we don't want to end up with subdivisions that don't have a good wildfire outlook. And so, because now we're cleaning up messes that could have possibly been avoided if planning had stepped in early.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we worked a great deal with the ingress and egress and that kind of stuff, so that evacuation, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's kind of been brought along the last few years, but I was just thinking of a funding mechanism.
They just got hit again.
Paradise
They just had to evacuate again.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, so, you don't even just get to burn once, you get to burn again. So it's a thing that I think really needs to keep percolating to the top. I don't know how effective this plan is to help that, but it's one of the requirements, it's one of the boxes we need to tick off. And we've done it satisfactorily because the state person in charge has signed off on it, and we know that it's not going to impede our getting any resources moving forward. So it's basically, an opportunity. I would encourage you guys, you want to read it, you want to take some time with it, sign it on another day, come back, that's fine.
I got it downloaded now, I can really get into it.
You're going to see, like you say, Mark Woods is no longer our CIFA chief, but the reality is that those are minor details. Almost all the rest of the contents is pretty accurate, so.
Pretty pictures.
Neat pictures, huh?
Yeah. So then next week, you want to agenda this as an action item to approve this? Is that the goal?
We can.
Doug, you can do that for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything else? Any more questions?
Bring it, don't burn it finishes, huh, guys?
Well, I guess we got
Having
a
fun with that?
pretty good pile up in the MRF now, huh?
Yeah,
I was telling Elton, I've never seen that pile, either the construction pile or the woody debris pile that
I've
big
been up
before.
there over the last week and it's just getting bigger.
I passed 3 loads on my way here this morning. I mean, it is so awesome. By the
The
way,
construction debris fire is it's bigger than it ever has been too, so gonna be 2 nice big fires going on.
and to your point and concern on that, what we'll do is we'll coordinate, we'll do a couple ads in the newspaper. Maybe we'll talk about, just in general, talk about smoke, talk about, timing. We're starting to see prescribed fire around the county, it's happening. So maybe we can do a little more education, help your carefree residents be a little more comfortable with better now. Go to Boise for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. This
do
is the
something.
date, so
Right.
just evacuate.
Right. Because it's such a cool deal. This is the coolest deal ever, to really effectively control the reduction of this slash. The tons and tons that were brought out of private property at no cost it's phenomenal.
And after tomorrow, we can burn out in the valley floor, I should say.
We won't be burning until there's at least a foot of snow on that pile.
When he's talking about his burn, he's talking about his
I
burn.
have a lot of piles to do.
2 different burns involved.
Yep. Do it early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It works great.
Keep saying somebody's gonna open up one of those Habitat for Humanity stores and take all of that stuff.
Restore, yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
You could open one up there. You could have a little commerce site. People would be crazy.
We could get back to 10,000 we had to spend for the guy that fell off of it, or the lady that fell off of it.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Doug, do you have an afternoon next week by any chance?
2:15.
2:15 is great. It won't take very long.
Action item to approve the wildfire protection plan.
Actually, I put that under commissioners' discussion at 11:30.
Okay? That work?
If I get stuck, I'll call in.
Well, we can, okay. All right, just let us know.
Okay. I'm going to take a big giant trip to Walla Walla this weekend. So excited.
Horseback ride?
Yes.
Nice.
I would say
Always.
wine tasting.
No wine tasting, just riding. That's okay. I've had so many events canceled this year. I'm so excited. This one's gonna be very small, very managed. Can't wait. Excited for you.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're even gonna have a basketball season this year. I kind of doubt it.
Everybody's thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Send me any questions you want in advance and I'll have answers for you or answer them directly. Thank you, Chief.
All right, we're gonna move on then to our next item on our agenda, which is an action item. And at this time, I'm going to convene as the Brown County EMS Board. Go out as a commissioner. We're gonna have a workshop to review the study. And I'm not sure if the chiefs want to come up here and sit down, you want to stay back there, it's whatever you want to do. But I think we all got kind of a pretty good dose of understanding, and I want to ask you guys what you want to do. Who's gonna go first?
Are we just setting a workshop date or are we reviewing?
It's an hour.
Oh, we have an hour.
Can we combine some of the services? Can we combine like the medical director into one person? Can we combine the billing? Can we combine the purchasing, some of this stuff? Is that feasible? I guess the part that gave me heartburn over all of it, honestly, is kind of towards the end that Bill said something to the effect that even if you do combine stuff, you're not going to save any money. And that one really stuck with me. If you combine chiefs or whatever, you're still going to have battalion chiefs, assistant chiefs, whatever you want to call them, and it may not save any money. Well, why would we want to go in there and destroy something that's working now?
So I guess I'll start if everybody's quiet behind me.
Yeah, they're really quiet.
They're all looking at you.
So, hopefully that's not the case. So I guess, see here. When you look at a strategic vision such as this one, and you look at those recommendations that were allotted as business items, if you would, in the strategic plan, the main part of the strategic plan is looking at and understanding the gap analysis and how do we get the outcome that we want with a limited amount of contingency planning as we're going through those business line items. So specifically based on statute, which really limits how we would do it and when we would do it and what mill levy rates would be in the future, because there is such a huge gap analysis between McCall's levy rate and Cascade's levy rate, with Donnelly being the middle. You're looking at the possibilities of those things and how that would work. Well, if you go by statute and you go down, it looks like we could come to an average of what all of them are, and then that would be the new mill levy rate, which would mean we would go up around 5 to 10%. Cascade would go up about 20-some%. McCall would actually go down. So that wouldn't really benefit McCall in any consolidation, because they would lose money in their town, because it would be now spread throughout the county. If we were to agree, and that's all 12 commissioners agree and all 5 chiefs agree, 17 people agreeing, and then the 10 to 13,000 residents agreeing that they want a higher levy rate, then that would go into fruition. We could also move straight up and just average out Cascades and McCall's to whatever McCall's levy rate, and that would be the new levy rate. Again, McCall wouldn't change. McCall would stay at the same levy rate, wouldn't gain any more dollars. All the dollars would go at about 25% increase to our taxpayers and constituents in Donnelly, and close to 48% increase in Cascade in levy rate. So when you look at that, and you're disseminating just the statutes of how to dissolve a district, reestablish a district, and create a levy rate, and all the players involved. And because there's such a huge gap in just that one portion, it's almost an exercise of futility when you look at consolidation at that level. Now, when we're looking at consolidation, or rather collaboration of effort, when you look at all the other recommendations, as I look at them, and my commissioners look at them, we're doing 90 to 100%, almost 90 to 95% of those already. We already have a committee that's established. It's called the Administrative Council. Administrative Council is made up of one commissioner, all 3 medical directors, and all 3 departments are represented in that. To go over operational plans, all of the things to get more concise and being more mainstream and follow the same language and same operation plan. Now, there is some differences. We all have our own medical directors, and there's reasons why we have our own medical directors. That's part of that cultural thing. Our medical director has been with us since day one, and he has 40 years experience as medical director for us. With that is as you look at our medical director, the state of Idaho has listened to our medical director. If, for instance, in a couple of examples, EMTs couldn't give epi before, not until Donnelly was progressive and our medical was progressive with the Physicians Commission to allow for that curriculum change so that we could do that. The other big one is the EMT today with all of the extra modules. The Physicians Commission, the State Bureau was hem-hawing on getting that curriculum out. Donnelly went ahead and built that curriculum with our medical director so that now that's the curriculum for the state. We got to do it first. Everybody else follows suit. Why would we change our medical director for that? Who's someone who is so progressive and so learning. And yes, we do all follow the same protocol to a certain extent with the exception of surgical crite and RSI. Every other protocol we're following. And now we're able to do needle crites. And after our discussions through our QA and QI discussions based on a couple of more reporting of medical runs, we're looking at doing possibly RSI in the future with some extra training. So we will be following the same protocols, which was another recommendation of that. Now, when we talked to billing and he brought up huge things about fraud and all that, was because he doesn't like the way Donnelly does its billing, because we do it in-house. But what he doesn't realize is the person who's doing our billing in Donnelly has been doing it for 25 plus years for First Medical, McCall Medical Memorial, and now St. Luke's. She knows the code book better than the code book. And we still have a one-on-one with each of our billing individuals, especially those who need help. We have a one-on-one with payment plans, indigent funding paperwork that we have one-on-one as a department member who's doing it. And we don't pay her anymore for that because she's already on shift. Doesn't cost the district anymore for her to be there because she does it while she's on shift. So there is no possibility of fraud there. And it works for us. Now, he might say, because he did say, that billing isn't working for us because we have 40% of our individuals aren't paying the bill. And we're writing it off. Well, that's true, but you got to look at the demographic of Donnelly. Demographic of Donnelly is made up of the subservient workforce for the rest of the county. So yes, we're utilizing the hospital and we're utilizing the clinic more because we're the backbreakers of the county and we're the labor force. And we're underpaid, underinsured, or not insured at all. So those people are struggling paying their bill for EMS. That's why we're probably the lowest rate for EMS as we get into billing, because we know the constituents we're serving, we're not going to get the full rate anyway because very few can pay that rate. So we're able to, because we're doing our own billing and now that manage it within our own confines and our own cultural bringing of our district. That's where Donnelly is today. And I say it's an exercise of futility when we come into consolidation because based on just the atmosphere and the many years that we're going to be dealing with 2020 in the future, I, for one, personally cannot go to my constituents and ask for more money. I've had close to 150 calls over both publications last week and the week before. 2 questions. Is Donnelly for this and how much more is it going to cost? Many comments as from past commissioners that sat here. We approved the budgets. Your constituents, who I happen to be one of those constituents, approved and allowed your district. Now you want more money? And you're talking a huge percentage of money? We have to look at that. And I don't hear people in Donley complaining about the service in which we're providing today. What I hear is about the cost of the service that we're providing today. We, with our mutual aids, as we go through automatic aids that we have, our collaboration of effort in that in both EMS and fire. When you look at the makeup of the command structure that the EMS study proved, that's 5 chiefs. How many chiefs right now are we employing in Valley County? 5 chiefs. The only difference is the chiefs are gonna make $10,000 more. I, for one, can't sit for that. My commissioners won't sit for that. I agree that we need to continue our collaborative efforts with the administrative council as chiefs being one, and that's one thing is, Chief Hall and I talked this morning just briefly, and it was, people don't understand that 10 years ago, we would cut each other's lines if we crossed. You know, you never crossed a district boundary. When I became chief and Garrett became chief and assistant chief and Steve became chief, all of that changed. There is a blurry line now. We are really have a huge consolidated effort that wasn't shown in the study. And there's reasons why. And I think all the chiefs still agree. The reason why is this person took a little bit of information, came up with a consolidation plan, and built the other 270-page document to substantiate his outcome. It is a cut and paste, that's it, cut and paste document. We didn't get what we asked for. What did we ask for? We asked for, where's EMS today? Where should EMS be? Meaning, what are the best practices nationally that we're not doing or we're doing not enough of or we need to start doing? Where's the money for today? What should EMS actually be costing us? And what's the prospectus in the future to get there? Did we get that? No, we didn't. That was the premise of the job. I will tell you that Mr. Bill Boyd, other than one document that he has translated into a study, other than one, has always been consolidation. The very first paragraph is consolidation of this document. And I honestly feel, based on statute and based on gap analysis, that the majority of those recommendations we're already doing, so I'll pass, don't even need to be in the strategic model because the administrative council is already doing it, are moving towards it. And I think that's what we need to look at is, and I'll tell you right now, Donley is very progressive, and we've always been progressive since I've been chief and the commissioning board that we have. We have paved the way in many places. And I'm not going to alter any growth in fire and EMS, and I learn all the time. I remember sitting just recently giving kudos to this man saying he finally made me wake up when it came to transfers. And I'm willing to change. And I'm willing to do whatever we have to, but it can't be off the backs of the constituents in which we're serving. As leadership, I see it time and time again, where some of the decisions that we're making as leaders does not take in mind the grassroots people who have to pay for it so the tourists can come play in our community. And we are paying for it as taxpayers to provide a service of everything. That's why our infrastructure is where it is, and not just fire and EMS. And we're just one of many infrastructures who are really struggling to be efficient. And it's coming off the back of our constituents. And I look at my Donley constituents, and I look at that model of what the pay rate would be for chief all the way down. We would be the highest paid organization in average to go with that model than anybody. We would have teachers who have 10 years with master's degree making less than the majority of the individuals on that pay scale. That's got to raise questions and flags. And I don't think it's fiscally responsible to our constituents to look at consolidation. but to continue the efforts and collaboration of effort and take those recommendations with the advice of the administrative council and its representatives, each of the districts and the commissioning board here, and move forward with those that can be moved forward and continue those discussions.
I agree with you, Juan, on the fact that, excuse me, that I thought we were gonna get a whole different report. My concern was that we look at growth and what's happened in the last 10 years, what's gonna happen in the next 10 years and 30 years from now, to say that you're gonna need X amount of EMTs, X amount of ambulances, and X amount of facilities, and on and on and on. We didn't get any of that, other than just consolidate everything, and it's not gonna save you any money anyway. And that was very frustrating to me. I was kind of disappointed. And I'm wondering, sitting here thinking, the only way that we can really grow for the future is some kind of an impact fee on new development. Well, we can't do that. Legislature won't let us do that. So how do we get around the 3%? Because the 3% isn't going to be enough if we keep getting the growth we get. That's my concern, honestly.
And that's one problem when they built the 3% in new construction limitations within the state of Idaho. On a normal scale, 3% in new construction and normal growth pattern should pay for itself. But we do not, in Valley County, we don't live on a normal scale. We live on a feast or famine scale. And when we feast, we really feast, and the infrastructure cannot keep up with 3% in new construction. There is new legislation, and there's rewritten legislation, and there's omissions that are allowing for impact fees. There are other counties that are doing impact fees today. It isn't based on population base, it's based on the need of the infrastructures and the base of the collaboration within the agencies that are asking for those entities, and they're laid out. And Garrett's become more and more well-versed in those particular topics. I have to just ask Garrett how that works, because he's really looking into that, and because that is an avenue we could take to moving forward.
I think the last time that was in here, we had, you guys correct me, 338 new building permits this year? 383 or
It was
something
over,
like
yeah, it
that.
was over 315, I remember that.
And if we had an impact fee, we could catch some of those funds to go to EMS, to go to fire, to go to sheriffs. We're not able to do that. It's as far as I knew, the last time I looked, maybe stuff has changed, but you had to have a population of 100,000 or more before you could charge impact fees. And that doesn't make any sense.
I think that's changed.
What's the number now?
I don't think it's based on population. There's some other drivers
There's
behind
no
it.
population requirement.
CUNA actually is doing impact fees for their department, and they only have 20,000.
And I think that's a pretty easy sell to the public, to our locals.
It's just
I
how
mean,
much
hey,
money we
let's-
get.
We would have to run an election, I'm assuming. No, you could just start them?
Well, you can just start them at the end of like public hearings and, big process. There's a lot of process that goes into it. Each agency, say the counties and cities are the only ones that can collect impact fees, but you have to collect them for capital improvement related to future development. So basically, you do an analysis of, like, you could use the sheriff's department as an example. You got a sheriff's department station, you got so many patrol vehicles and infrastructure that covers a population for Valley County of 11,000 people. And then you say each new development, you take a percentage of that 11,000 versus what the sheriff's department total budget is for those capital expenditures. And then you say for each new development that comes in, somebody's gonna put in that percentage into the coffers for future capital improvements. So that if the sheriff's department needs to add 2 more vehicles and another station for a population of 10,000 more people, by the time you get to that 10,000 number, you'll have enough money saved through capital improvement to fund those.
Garrett, does it fund wages too?
It does not.
Just capital improvement?
Yeah. And it's really beneficial to mainly road departments and fire departments because of the cost associated with capital infrastructure. Fire, the cost of a fire truck and a station, and like a road grader or a loader. It's not as big of a deal for sheriff's departments, but I'd say those three in particular, roads, fire, and sheriffs.
You couldn't use it for an ambulance, could you?
Yes, you could.
But
Equipment.
Once we get our capital improvement plan in place, that will help us to identify some of that. I
Well, and
think that
what
would be
this
helpful.
study does is it kind of shows, Travis, the ratio of, what do they call that? Yeah, unit per,
Unit hour utilization rate.
unit hour out utilization rate. So that is formulated based on how busy each medical unit is for the area. And so once you hit 25%, yeah, 25 for EMS, which you can base on call volume. So if like we were doing a analysis of calls based on per unit hour utilization, you can figure out roughly how much population or how much population swing is gonna increase that hour utilization on an ambulance unit. And then say, same thing, hey, if we increase population by 5,000 people in the county or in this jurisdiction, the per unit hour utilization is gonna go up, and then we'll need another ambulance. And hypothetically, if you do the calculations correctly, by the time that population grows, you'll have enough saved for a new station and a new ambulance.
The only thing about that too is our number of permits include all kinds of sheds and everything else. It's not just housing. And so you have to put a fairly high cost on it in order to make it cost effective to do something. So it's like that impacts your local housing opportunities because those costs of housing just goes up and we already have a high cost to build. So you really have to balance the effectiveness of that to the cost of housing up here.
Yeah. And I think this year's a little bit concerning, at least from the Idaho Fire Chiefs Association. I know they're looking at a lot of legislation this year just to look at 3% new construction and the way property taxes are handled. And I think, like Chief Bonilla stated, Valley County is a little bit unusual. There's probably 3 counties that are similar in Idaho where the increase in population and new construction does not keep up with growth. The new construction and 3% is to maintain status quo, not grow.
I think at one time when I figured it out, it had to be something like 4.6% instead of 3%. Would get you extra funds every year that you could save for, but that's pretty hard to figure that out. Steve, do you want to come up? Give us your opinion.
And to piggyback on what Chief Bonilla said, I think, and what the study doesn't point to is how collaborative we are together. And just to add some context to like Tom Grody's editorial last week in the paper, I think just the fact that we even signed up to do a study like this is an indication that we don't have our egos tied up into it. We're trying to do what's best for Valley County. And this study, I think provided some good data. You have to like pull it out of it and extract it and apply it. They didn't do the application. The consolidation recommendation is based on not understanding Idaho statute and how complicated that process is. And the budget that they use in particular runs a deficit in the first year, yet they're using a levy rate that's 16% higher than McCall's in the first year. And they forecasted revenue at 1.7 million for EMS transport revenue, and currently we collect 400,000, which is, you might be able to make up a little bit, right, in perfect billing, but you're not making up quadruple.
So Garrett, do you feel like maybe the RFP we went out for the study is not what this guy did?
Like I said, they did some good data. They ran our data together. They ran the per unit hour utilization numbers and stuff. They project, right, system increase of like whatever, 80% in 10 years. Like, that's good stuff. That's what we were looking for. And I think that was the intent of doing the study. These companies are looking to increase efficiency any way they can in consolidation. When we first floated the idea of doing this, we talked about the fact that consolidation would be probably their number one recommendation. And it is. And these guys are out of Oregon. They started in Oregon. Oregon has a lot different legislation on consolidation, legal consolidation. Idaho, it's a little complicated. It's really simple if the fire district's levy rates are within 4% of each other's. Ours are not. And so then you either have to do a permanent override in all of the districts combined or in two of them simultaneously, which requires a supermajority and would, like in this instance, would increase Cascade's taxes by 55% or higher. I think it's like 64% to get to the number that these guys projected in year one. That's not realistic. I think there are things that we could tighten up as the EMS administrative council. But it's all stuff that we're working on currently and we've been working on for the past few years. That isn't reflected in this.
Still not gonna get you that extra 700,000 that you need to get to 1.7 million.
No, and honestly, we've all talked on the phone since this came out. My intent or my thought is that there should be a base number for what it costs to staff an ambulance in Valley County 365 days a year with revenue, and that the system should pay for itself. We should get enough taxes and have enough charges for service to pay to wash that balance. And we need to figure out what that number is. And then based on the call data, say if Cascade triples in population in the next 10 years and they need a second ambulance in Cascade, that they get funded to have a second ambulance that's going to fund the ambulance, and charges for services are going to pay for itself. I think as fire districts, our primary mission as the fire district is to provide fire protection, and this whole wildland thing and everything has thrown another wrench in that, and for us to be prepared for. And at this point, all the fire districts spend quite a bit of money keeping ambulances staffed. And to Chief Bonilla's point, are the taxes that come in with 3% new construction don't cover all the tourism influx that we get here that increase our call volume. So I think we have to get creative in how we come up with funding for that.
And one thing Garrett did bring up that his deputy chief brought up was the deployment strategy is really unattainable based on our geographical area. And Travis, if he wanted to say something, because I remember we talked about that, and he's like, it doesn't make sense how, and he's a deployment strategist, so, I mean, we go to him to ask him that stuff. He said there was a lot of flaws in the study that it would be hard to maintain those deployment strategies. And you can add.
Yeah, I mean, from a geographical standpoint, trying to meet NFPA from a fire standpoint or NHTSA requirements for response time to cardiac arrest or something like that. Putting Cascade out of service, for example, because you don't have staff or something. Well, we would never hit any benchmarks based on the geography from Donley to get an ambulance there and vice versa. So we have a lot of trouble from an operational standpoint of integrating services. We could integrate personnel, but you're still gonna have to keep, services in each of those communities to meet those standards, especially coming out of this plan where it says we want to have like services in like communities provided by the system, right? But the ambulance district should be providing the same services in Cascade as it does in McCall and in between, right? And so it's hard to find efficiencies in that. The efficiencies are going to be found in, that day-to-day minutia of training and whether it be billing or other little things that we're going to find small incremental increases in. But yeah, I think geographically, you can't ask a second new ambulance from McCall to respond to Cascade. You're dead, I'm sorry, before we get there, so we've got to better leverage our air resources and stuff. I mean, yeah. Does that answer your question, Chief?
Yeah, thank you. And then one of the other things too was the dispatching model, where he said he wasn't getting this information. And he didn't have enough data.
That's a good point.
That is incorrect, because, I mean, I know that it got back to our supervisor at dispatch, and I had to assure her that that is not what we think. It's because he didn't do enough study in his own study to substantiate that data, because she has that data. We can get that data. We
He was
keep
looking
that.
for run times or something
It
between.
is when we got the call to going out, they said they couldn't get it in Donley, and then there were too much variances between Cascade and McCall that threw out that particular client data. And that's untrue, because I know that Kelly has all that data. I mean, we've asked for that data before, just so I could tell the guys, hey, we need to pick up the pace, or, why was this run for this month, why we're taking so long to get out the door, those kinds of things. So there was the data there. And, I know she's here, and if she wanted to speak to that, she could. I'd feel free to.
Okay, Kelly, if you don't mind waiting, I'm gonna ask Steve what his thoughts are on all this, and then we'll get to you.
Well, my thoughts, just kind of to reiterate what Chief when he had said, if you look back in time, use that example, 10 years ago of not working together, there's a lot of things that we do together that this document does not show. And Ferry and I tried to have Tom Grady not produce the article before we met, so we could have an answer for some of the things that we do together or similar. And there's a lot of stuff that we do. There was big red letters of we should all use the same protocols. Well, guess what? We do use the same protocols. And there is some good information in here, but like Garrett said, you got to kind of extrapolate it out. For the projected growth, for the projected budget, some of it's kind of far-fetched, but some of it is accurate. So we can use some stuff out of this. But as you stated, did we get what we asked for? Maybe in a roundabout way, but not in black and white. You can open it up and anybody that doesn't know what's going on could say, hey, here's where they are. Here's where we think we need to go in 10 years. Here's what we've got to have, X, Y, and Z. That's not really here for us to look at.
And that's kind of what I thought we'd get.
Yeah. So I guess we could use parts of this to help us move forward. And with the EMS Administrative Council, I know they work on stuff all the time to try and make things similar throughout the valley, throughout the county. We have the same monitors, same protocols, I feel that most medics could go any place and work if they had to figure things out. But yeah, I think, like I said, there's some stuff in here that's good information that'll help us move forward, but it's just not a clear picture of how that'll work.
And I think we could probably take some of our own population projections just from our own history and kind of figure out that, we're gaining 200 people a year or 300 people or 500, whatever that is.
Right.
And then can just see what we've got, how much space we have left in that system. And okay, when we reach this point, we're going to need another ambulance here or here or here. We could do that, a lot of that ourselves, I think. Actually, you guys could do that.
No, and we got the foundation of data, I think, to move forward, capturing that data and looking at it. It's just a matter of time.
So right now, if you take this data, I know a number of people that are now using their second homes as their primary residence. We've grown like right now just because of COVID. So is this information helpful? Because it's really not even about the tourists, it's about the second homeowners that are up here that could choose us any day. And keeps talking about the fact that we're gonna retire there in 5 years or less. So on any given weekend, you guys are helping 20,000 people, not 10,000 people or 30,000 people.
Right. And you almost have to build a system to handle that many people,
You do.
even though you only have 11,000 or whatever it is full-time. There's actually a lot more folks up here.
And that is kind of projected in this document, that the median age of 65 and older is going to increase tremendously. And I think that's what it was referring to.
Mhm.
And that's why the percentages were so much of an increase on the EMS side, especially in McCall, an 80% increase was because of all the second homes that are there, in my opinion.
So Kelly, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, I will agree that, because I've been dispatching for 24 years, and it hasn't always been a happy environment, and so they are absolutely correct in what they say about the cooperation amongst the departments, including the sheriff's office. I think also what you're forgetting too is there are several districts out there that have zero fire protection, and they are increasingly getting more homes out there. Steve and I talked about Horseleaf, Gulfport, all of those areas, God's Acres, the CR's 2, 3, 4, and 5 subdivisions. None of them have fire protection. They're not paying into our districts. And High Valley and Smith's Ferry. So there's more money there, but they've chosen not to be there, but their ambulance are covered in their districts, right? As far as the questionnaire that I got, it was so confusing. And there was no explanation in that questionnaire at all. So when I was answering those questions, all of the data that they need, they can get from us. We have a system on our Viper system that shows that we are actually exceeding the national standard for calls for service from the time they're answered to the time they're dispatched. And we've done that for years. So I will agree with what they said, that some of that data is just not correct, and it's there. It just was really, that study for me was confusing in the way it was worded, and there was no explanation for it.
So Kelly, can you explain to me really quick, what's the process to bring these folks that are out of district in the district? Is that an election, or do they have to apply, or?
So a lot of
Kelly,
that was
can you
done.
come to the microphone? I'm sure that the newspapers.
A lot of
online
that
right
was
now will
done back before any of us were here. They chose to annex themselves out of the fire districts.
That's right. No, I remember.
So the only way to get them in would be to go to those homeowners associations and request. Stephen, Chief Hull, is one of the only ones that has, his district is ridiculously huge. And a lot of it is based off access. So his goes up to Yellow Pine. Trails in subdivision is not covered by fire. It's only by ambulance service. But the only way that you can get there in the winter is either via snowmobile, or if you come in off of East Side or East Lake Fork, or if you go up towards Johnson Creek, right? So all of those areas that have no fire protection, dispatch, all we do is dispatch either with respective Forest Service to protect the trees and to protect the land. And there's hundreds of them.
I just wonder if they're at that point where they're getting the letters from their fire insurance saying, we're no longer gonna cover you because.
Right. Well, we get phone calls in dispatch all the time from insurance companies that ask us to clarify what type of protection they have. So within our mapping system, we show that they are not covered under fire. So they're paying extra in insurance rates when that money really could probably be used better for the community and the infrastructure.
How hard would it be for you or someone to put all that data together?
I have it all together.
How much we're missing out on? The sheriff's jumping up. She wants to.
I just had some questions. If they did join the fire department, or fire district, you have to be able to respond to those in a certain amount of time too, right?
Right. Chief Hull could speak to that because he contracts with several people out at Gold Fork or at Horse Thief and Scott Valley and Smith's Ferry. That's the majority of his. But a lot of people, when they purchase homes, they don't realize that they don't have fire protection because they're buying second homes.
Another consideration that you have to see is we've seen a huge increase in responding to Airbnbs. And again, you have 10, 15 people inside that residence. And there's more people as far as the tourist goes, and these guys are having to even dispatch. Like the sheriff and I had gone through stats at the end of August, and we're at 1,500 calls for service this time last year. That was just at the end of August.
1,500 more than this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to do something here pretty quick. But I agree with what the sheriff said. There's no reason to annex somebody in Warren or CSAS if you can't get to them. Those folks would really like to join Valley County.
Right.
They've already told us that.
Yeah.
They've got to do that through their commissioners, and it's a major, major process.
Yeah.
Okay, you got your hand up? I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Sure, Travis.
Travis.
So going back to the original question that you asked Kelly, the 3 districts are using 3 different software to put their incident numbers in right now. So we use ESO, I can't remember what you guys use. And that's gonna cause incongruencies in the data. It's gonna be hard to extrapolate it out. People and all that stuff, that makes it more difficult. So I give them a little bit of variance on, he did make some bold statements. And I think just trying to get data out of 3 different systems and make it look the same is often very difficult. And I'd like to just speak from my experience before is we went into an ESCI study down south, and we did not get the product we wanted out of it. We felt that way. But once we digested that, we realized their overarching thing was more long-term vision is what they were trying to help us with. Said that we have to dissect that out of there and make it fit us. And we were pissed, honestly, because it was like, what did we pay you guys for? And I think that's some of the sentiment that I'm hearing there. What do we pay these guys for? But we have to start, consuming this information and making decisions based on what we did learn out of it. And then, and I think we can move forward with that because all 3 of them said, yeah, there was some good stuff in there. We just have to digest it. So from my previous experience, we had a similar reaction to the information. It wasn't what we thought we were going to get. But at the end of the day, we were to take some bold steps and actually make some big differences. And when we come to our EMS advisory committee meeting, we'll have target things to talk about that to address some of these things. So I don't think, my opinion is it wasn't a waste of time because we learned a lot about ourselves and things we knew about ourselves but didn't recognize.
But it just wasn't as good as we'd hoped.
Yeah, I think our vision oftentimes with ESCI is a little bit different than what they.
So what is your guys' game plan from here? Are we going to try and do some short term and then look at long term? I know, Juan, you talked a great deal about you didn't want to tax your constituents anymore, but have you considered actually running an election to see how they feel, or have you guys talked about that? I need to know where you guys want to go from here.
So I think we need to be very cautious, specific to the economic atmosphere of trying to go for more money right now. Based on something we've already said that isn't exactly what we want, and you have to figure out what is in there that's viable and fiscally responsible, all in the name of efficiency. And my thing is I would say, and we have 2 members of the administrative council here, so if I'm speaking out of turn, my vision is based on the representation that we have at that table, being a commissioner, the 3 medical directors and representatives from each district, that along with the chief's support, disseminating this information, we come up with a set of objectives and we start chipping away at what we can in a better, concise strategic plan that has the optimum gap analysis so we can get those outcomes and get them as soon as possible. So one, the constituents who are trying to understand the study as well understand that we're still working and have that gain forward in service. And that continued collaboration with all 3 chiefs, which I think I hope never goes away even after I'm gone. And after these chiefs are gone, I hope we continue with that collaboration of effort because I think that's the best bang for our buck at this point as we move forward.
Honestly, Juan, I think if you guys weren't getting along, if we were to see how you guys would just coalesce around each other and help each other out, and help each other train and take care of each other, and that's really awesome.
Yeah,
That's great.
training's open to everyone. I mean, we have, McCall's got their IFSAC certification at our training facility, so they wouldn't have to travel anywhere. I mean, that's open. All our EMS training functions, we're always inviting each other or doing collaborative. That's how that works. I guess my biggest point would be, we have an administrative council that's made up of the proper leadership. We need to give them an opportunity to look at these things, because I've appointed my delegate, each of these. I trust my delegate, who happens to be the chair, who's sitting behind me, to do what's right for the EMS system and make those recommendations as we move forward on my behalf and my commissioner's behalf. So I don't want to underline that as a chief decision at this point. I trust the deputy chiefs, my assistant chiefs. I utilize all of those individuals for information as we make decisions. I'm at the point in my career where I've made my decisions. I built a district. I helped build an EMS district. I'm looking for that progressive growth and what these two younger chiefs are going to need, not just as a collaborative of chiefs, but for the future of the system. I don't want to make decisions that's going to burden them and inherit my job. So I'm taking a lot of information from these two as we move forward. You don't always see that in leadership, but I think that's proper leadership, especially in the first response round. Now we have Travis, who has a vast knowledge of other things in big departments and growing those departments. So that's another person that they're definitely going to get information. I think this is a great time to be in fire and EMS in Valley County, because we have so many new minds, not just my mind and the old school mind. It's these new guys that are going to bring us up to where we need to be. And we're going to utilize a lot of this stuff, but it's going to be at the time that's needed, and it's going to be fiscally responsible. And I don't think asking for more money, the numbers that Chief DeYoung has put out, is fiscally responsible to our constituents at this time.
However, with that being said, I want you to keep your mind open to that. If these two guys, or if your council comes back and says, that's what we need to do, then you need to get behind that.
And I will support that.
And Garrett, I hope in your situation that maybe you could get us, me especially, some more of the information on the impact fees and how we can kind of think about that. Because that's always been an issue way back in 8 years ago. It's like, we should be able to do this. We should be able to vote ourselves impact fees if we want it, anywhere in the state, any city, county. But at that time, they wouldn't let us do anything. And it's been a pretty heated discussion with a lot of commissioners over the years at IEC, that kind of stuff. It's very frustrating. I'm glad to hear that maybe there's some options. So, maybe you could explore that. And if you get a chance, make me a copy. See, Steve, anything else?
Don't think so. Just a little bit on the impact fees. I looked at it because, like Chief DeYoung said, cities and counties are the only ones that can collect those impact fees and distribute to fire EMS and law enforcement and roads. And I looked for, with the city of Cascade, and after looking into it, talked to some people about it, and I didn't think it was the best. It wouldn't generate enough revenue within the city of Cascade just for Cascade to do it. I think it has to be a countywide deal, because you have 8 years to expend those capital improvement fees once you start collecting them.
And then after 8 years, it stops, correct? I mean, then you can't.
To do a new analysis.
You have to do a new election, I'm assuming?
No, just a new.
Oh, I see, a new capital improvement.
Capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess the last thing that I would ask is, shoot, my mind just went blank. Oh, Carrie, geez. Well, anybody, have you guys ever sent letters to some of these subdivisions that aren't in the fire district and said, you guys want to join? We can save X amount of dollars on your fire insurance, and this is what it would cost you. Have you ever, anybody ever thought about that?
We've done it in the call. We've got Rock Flat on Adams County and everything by Little Ski Hill. And we contract with a lot of the property owners in there. And, I want to say 4 years in a row, I sent them a letter to basically outline the process of annexing into the fire district. And I really just needed, a couple of homeowners to take the bull by the horns and get a petition going and stuff. And I never got one phone call.
We did letters for CRs to all the CR subdivisions, because there's so many of them over there. And
Nothing.
we had like 2 homeowners that even went and like spearheaded, tried to get groups together. They did it like 3 years in a row, and now they haven't done it for a few years. We've had Scott Acres people, like, how do we annex, and we're like, well, you have to get CR subdivisions to be congruent, district lines and all these things, and it really hasn't come to fruition just based on the fact that there isn't enough buy-in from all of the residents.
But that's for a fire district, correct? Not an EMS district.
EMS was automatically incorporated.
Same
when
boundaries.
the district system was
Yeah, they're part of
originated
it.
But you still respond
for EMS.
for putting out fire?
So we use what I call a gray area on fire specific to that west corridor is we have been delegated by the sheriff automatically for specific things. So we'll send the ambulance to a fire, and in order to protect our ambulatory personnel, I'll send a fire truck just in case I gotta pull somebody out of the building or our people need it. So there's a little loophole there that we utilize the delegations to the sheriff's department so that we're not just leaving the house burning, especially because that's where a lot of wildland effort needs to take place, and we don't want the fire to get out of control.
Right. We're about out of time, I guess. Do we need to formulate a plan when do you want the winter to look at this? You need a month? What
I
time
think we
frame?
should have my recommendations, we'd have the administrative council look at this further and then come up with any recommendations. And I would hope that the chairman would invite each of the chiefs to participate in that next administrative council as we move forward. And you already have representation from the county there.
If you looked out 20 years, is this still the same system that you guys would want? I mean, go out a ways. 20 years from now, is this still gonna make sense? If it's not, give yourself a goal and then work backwards from there. So sometimes when you try and make decisions based on the ground of the people in positions right now, you have names to those positions, and it makes it harder to make good decisions. But if you know that you're not going to be in those positions 20 years from now, and this would make more sense, work toward that and take names off of it.
Man, I don't know, as much growth as we've gotten this last 2 or 3 years. I think 20 years is too long. Maybe 10 years. See where we're gonna be in 10 years.
What I'm trying to say is it takes the emotion out of bad decisions
Yeah.
or hard decisions. So
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate everybody coming in on this. This is something that we'll just keep pecking at and figure it out. See how it goes in the Star News next week. Hey Doug, at this time I'm gonna come out of the EMS at 2:13.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys, be
Thanks
safe.
for all you do. Hey Lon, it was good seeing you 3 times today.
Yeah, now I get to go back to the office.
Come see us once in a while.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we just take a 1 minute break?
You bet, absolutely, if you need a break.
Got 3 minutes anyway.
Yeah, but some of us are old, we take longer than 3 minutes.
Oh, the snow house.
It's done. Yeah, I was gonna say. I saw that email too.
People are watching our meeting. That's a good thing.
What is it? I missed the first part, the snow house?
The snow house, Cindy mentioned that the snow house that you guys wanted red tagged in Round Valley, it is red tagged. And we've written 3 letters on taking care of tearing it down. They replied and said they were going to contact the fire department. Since it isn't done, I will refer the matter to the prosecutor.
Wow, is that cool or what, huh?
It's done.
Awesome.
It was the snow
Yeah.
house?
Snow Bowl Chapel.
Calling it the snow- Where is it?
2-story building down there.
Right as you come out of the canyon.
It's like all
on the
plywood. I
straightaway.
mean, that's the thing. It was like you never put siding on it,
He had this fake brick siding that's really thin.
Just
And
peeled
it came
off.
in sheets, he just nailed it on. It's kind of like a cement board. And he sold tons of that. for a long time. Then people quit and he started using it on his own stuff.
I remember, I was trying to explain it to somebody the other day.
We gave Dave his own
Not the
little
other day,
corner
for a while,
over there.
but when the last
He's
time I
sitting in
saw
his own little
vehicles there,
corner in his own little trailer.
I mean, I remember there being occupants there. I don't remember how long ago it was.
Probably 4 years ago.
Oh, really? That recently?
Yeah, Leah, the mom, was there the last, and then she got old and, you know, dementia, and they moved her to a nursing facility. But I don't know, the years go by so fast anymore. It might have been longer than that.
It looks like it would have been there for longer.
Yeah.
We go until 4 now? I'll let you in.
All right, folks, we're gonna go back on our agenda here. The next item is an action item. It's the opening of the sheriff's office vehicle bids. Sheriff, do you have those? Or I guess Jeff, you would have those, wouldn't you? Yeah, there we go.
Three of them.
And these are for the standard pickup?
Sheriff patrol vehicles, SUVs.
SUV, so these are okay,
Two of them.
two of them. Somebody writing this down? Wow, that is small writing.
So the two for Mountain Home and CDRJ is off the state bid.
Okay.
And I forgot to double the price.
Mountain Home,
Mountain Home Auto Ranch.
Not a home auto ranch.
what did you call it? CDG?
CDRJ of Burley. That price needs to be doubled on that one. That's for one. I forgot to double it.
Okay, their bid for a utility police interceptor all-wheel drive four-door. Each is $34,810. Plus, what's the 3%?
Admin fees.
So the total bid for that one from Mountain Home is $35,854.30.
Is that the Ford or Dodge?
I think it's an F-131.
Should say Ford Escape or Ford Explorer or Dodge Durango. That's pretty small, I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some new glasses on that one.
That's the Ford. That's the Ford Explorer.
Ford Explorer.
That's for one, so double that price for two.
Okay, the next one is, oh boy, Young CDJRF of Burley. Is the dealership.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Young, capital CDJRF. of Burley. And this is a Dodge
Dodge Durango,
Police Charger.
not Charger,
Nope.
Durango.
Oh, yep, Dodge Durango Pursuit. All-wheel drive V8. And the total price on this is $33,183.14. We have a 3.5%.
Yep.
Okay. 33,183.14. Okay, and the last one is from Cascade Auto. And two new 2020 or newer pursuit rated all-wheel drive four-door SUVs. So I'm assuming that'd be the Durango. Doesn't really say. The bid there is $34,233 each. 34,233.
Jeff, the other one was an all-wheel drive V8. Do you know?
That should be the V8 from Cascade Auto.
I'll see if I can find it, Jeff, here.
Should be under horsepower rating if she's going off of our bid specs. Be 350 horsepower or higher.
Yep, 350 horsepower minimum gasoline. Includes delivery to Cascade, Idaho. So what's your pleasure?
What was the price difference between Cascade Auto and the other Dodge number?
About $1,100.
Which one was higher?
Cascade.
Cascade Auto, but we also give a 10% bump for a local dealer, so therefore she's cheaper where she's within that 10% bump.
And you would have to drive to Burley to get these.
They would.
No, you would.
Okay.
You have to take them with you. So what's your pleasure?
And we keep it local, and she's quite close to the other bid.
I agree.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion is to buy two of them from Cascade Auto for a total of $68,466. Is that correct?
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. You got that. And let me see that one back for Cascade Auto.
You guys are getting it
I
done.
thought this would all be filled out here, you know?
We don't open these, we don't know.
I know.
I'll borrow that one.
Did I get the vote on that?
I believe that you did, but if you want to, yeah.
Why can't I just sign this one? It's the same thing.
Is it the same thing?
Yeah.
Oh, it was part of the bid packet then, yes.
It's Jeff. It's okay.
I don't open these things, I don't know what they know. Sometimes it's just the bid papers, and other times it's who knows what.
I'm gonna toss this one, okay?
Throw that away.
It seems like we've bought a lot of vehicles in the last year.
I think so
Is
too.
it just me, or is it just, was ready for turnover time?
Yeah, we missed.
We missed one
Last
year.
year,
Yeah.
2 years ago,
Got it.
we were trying to lease and doing this and that, we lost a year, so now we're playing catch up.
Got it.
It'll probably be 3 next year and 2 the following year until we can start getting caught up again.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank
We're all
you.
done with that. Our next agenda item is in 5 minutes. If you need another break,
Anybody want water? I
Go.
have iced tea and I have blackberry bubbly.
How is that
Water.
blackberry bubbly?
It's really good.
Is it?
I like it. Something more than just water. Makes me think I'm having pop without all the side effects.
You got corn syrup in it?
I
That
don't
corn
know.
syrup is really bad.
Yes, it is.
They're finding all kinds of issues with it now.
No calories, no sweeteners, all smiles.
All right, smiles.
Doesn't even tell me what's in it. Is that a bad thing? Oh, carbonated water and natural flavor. That's it.
So are you Mr. Utter?
I am Mr. Utter.
All right, well, welcome. I think I met you before.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, I've met so many people in the last 8 years, I don't remember anybody.
Me too.
This is Kara's husband. It's Kara's.
Okay,
significant other.
now we're getting together.
Yeah, that's all coming back.
Yeah,
All those stories we've heard.
What about me?
We missed her singing to us from the back room right here. We could hear her. It'd get quiet in here and Kara singing. I loved it.
I'll come in and she'll in the kitchen and go into town and cook dinner.
That's a happy sound.
Yeah, she loves to sing.
Yeah, good for her. We used to.
Craig, you can come on up to the table if you want. We'll get started here in about 3 more minutes.
Okay. Information back up.
Sure.
What part of Colorado were you in?
Just now. Her dad's family is all from Aurora. So we were in the beautiful part.
Yeah.
They've been down there for forever, down near Buckley Air Force.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, I've been watching the news on the fires around Boulder and
Oh, they were, we
ripping.
was it Saturday when the winds really picked up that Cameron Peak fire? You could see it. It was getting a sheer wind and then it was doing a downslope. And so it felt like the smoke, you could see the smoke coloration. And it looked like a grass fire, like out at maybe the Arsenal or something like that. It was all coming down out of Cameron. And then one started in Boulder and one started up by Ward. So I don't know what they got going on up there, but this fire season's never ending.
Just keeps moving.
Yeah.
And it's gonna start moving down south again.
Yep. I got called to go out and we were too busy, so I turned those assignments down. I started in Alaska.
That's what I heard you were.
Yeah, for a while.
Is this the one that's right below the hill that?
No, that is, the Boar's Nest is, over Rapid River. Yeah, so what is that called? The Whitewater Subdivision,
Whitebird Ridge up in there.
well, no, it's Rapid River, it goes up to the,
Oh, up to the hatchery.
hatchery, it's
Yeah.
before that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that is
There's
Whitewater down there, I
there's
think.
Yeah, Whitewater Subdivision is up behind that farm.
Huh.
So the Boar's Nest is
Fun.
the east-facing slope, just before you get to Rapid River. So it's everything you can see, and then it goes up over the top just a little bit. So it's that piece of ground there. That's that picture.
Is this just south of the sewer lagoons?
That is a little bit south of the Sewer Lagoon. That'd be in off of Moon Ridge Drive. That would be
In the back.
the little Tubing Hill Road.
You can't give us things to look at because you know we're gonna open them before.
You're totally fine. I almost gave it to you for lunch, but
Okay, we're gonna move on to our agenda. The next item on our agenda is a discussion with Mr. Craig Utter on the Payette Land Trust and their presentation. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks for your time, Commissioners, Chairman. I appreciate you guys giving the Payette Land Trust a little time this afternoon. Again, my name is Craig Utter. I'm the Executive Director of the Payette Land Trust. Payette Land Trust is a nonprofit conservation land trust here in the West Central Mountains of Idaho. Started in 1993 as Chairman Hasbrock is very well aware. I think you were involved in the original formation of it. And kind of speaking to that, it's been around for 25 plus years and it's gone through a lot of different variations and growth over time. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come today and kind of talk about where we are, what we're doing. I've been with the Land Trust now for 3 years, and I know that we have a lot of education to do to bring both the community and the governmental entities that we work with up to speed. So really what I want to do is have a conversation. So at any point, you guys stop me and ask questions about Payette Land Trust, but I'll kind of start working through stuff. But it's really an informational session from my standpoint. I'd like to clear up any questions you guys might have about the Land Trust. But in your packet, that first little package that had the picture of the Boar's Nest Ranch on it. Inside of that, it shows you where our working area is. So the Payette Land Trust not only works in Valley County, but it works in Idaho, Adams, and Washington as well. We're the land trust for the central part of Idaho. Now there's a land trust, the Palouse Land Trust North. They're in Moscow, and then there's another Conixu up in Coeur d'Alene. There's one south of us, Treasure Valley, Land Trust of the Treasure Valley. Then there's Wood River. There's Teton Regional Land Trust. There's the Lemhi Land Trust, and there is a land trust in southeastern Idaho as well. So we're part of a network of land trusts that kind of cover the state, but our main focus group is these 4 counties. And those evolved out of requests over time to expand to those 4 counties, and we have properties in each one of those counties. The land trust holds 2 fee title properties, and the rest are in private ownership, and we have conservation easements on those properties. We have 10 of those. And of those properties, we have working ranches, we have easements with subdivisions to protect the Payette River. We've got parcels that are just was their backyard that was 40 acres that they wanted to see conserved. Some of these parcels have development envelopes in them. Some of them don't. Some of them allow public access and some of them don't. And that's a point that I want to get across right off the bat is that what we do is work with private landowners to conserve their property. And that can be anywhere from an agricultural entity to a straight up piece of ground that just has some trees on it. Or it could have a river in it, or it could be a standalone piece of farm ground. The main thing that we look at is that when we work with a private landowner, that conservation is at heart, and conservation falls into a couple of categories. That can be for water quality, that could be conservation of agriculture, conservation of timber, conservation of open space. What we do is we make sure that whatever easement that we write with a private landowner takes into consideration that the conservation should win out. And why would a landowner want to do a conservation easement with us? That could come in from a tax advantage standpoint. It could come in from a personal ethic. It could be part of an overall plan from a city, a county. We can dovetail into those land use plans as well. So there's many reasons. No easement is the same. They're all different because every landowner is different. We look at personal property rights very closely. I believe in those very strong. And so we want to work with that individual landowner, make sure that we're carrying forth their ethic. But it also has to be right for the land trust. And we have a long list of things that we feel are important to conserve within the valley, whether it's this valley or up in Idaho County or wherever. And as long as those things dovetail together, then we find those common grounds and we can usually move forward on Partnership is huge for us. We can't do it on our own. We're a nonprofit. We don't have a coffer of funds. And so we are constantly working to have partners. And I think that's better in the end because we're talking about shaping what a community might look like, or a county, or a landscape. And if you try and do that solely on your own, as you guys mentioned earlier, when you look at trying to deal something with the lake use issues, it gets very difficult. So you have to find ways to balance. And that's what we're about, is balancing conservation and development. The other page that you'll see in that general Payette Land Trust piece is our program areas. So we've got 4 major areas that we work in, and that's a land donation or an acquisition. We can purchase a piece of property if we have the funds, or we can fee title hold a piece of property. Like I said, we have 2 of those that were donated to us. Mainly we work in conservation easement ownership, so we'll own the easement, steward that throughout time. We work in perpetuity. We don't have any short-term easements. Everything we have is forever. It's deeded to the property. And those easements can either be donated or purchased, depending on what we need to do. And then we are also in the stewardship business, so we do perpetual land stewardship. So in between, when I was here earlier and I left, I went down to the Peterson property, met with some of the neighbors down there, and then walked that property to make sure that it's meeting our easements. And we do that with every piece of property every year. We go back and make sure that we are upholding the terms of those easements. And then the 4th program area is community conservation and education. And I think that's a relatively new sector for the Payette Land Trust. And that is actually reaching out to the community and talking about how balancing conservation and development can work in a community, whether it's from an economic standpoint, how does that fit within an economic plan? How does it fit within a conservation plan or an agricultural plan for a county? How do we reach out to people and talk about that idea of balance? We do that through programs, whether it's even like this, coming and discussing with governmental entities or land use groups, recreational groups, all the way down to little kindergartners. We've had an opportunity to work with Roots Forest School there in McCall, where one of our properties that's surrounded by all private land. So we can't open it to the public, but we can organize an event on the Huffman property. So we had all of those kids come out to that property and walk around through the trails that have been created on this 33 acres of timbered ground right on Lake Fork Creek off of Potter Lane. So the kids feel like they're in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around because we are in control of who can come and go. And I don't know if you're familiar with Nikki LeClaire, but she wrote a book called Critter Creatures. It's a kid's book. She lives next to the property. She wrote it about all the critters that she saw down there. So the kids had Nikki read to them about the book that she wrote about all the critters that were running around. And then we talk about what it's like to live in the mountains, to live in your community, and being involved in that. So we do that, as well as everything to this, talking about how can the land trust work with the Valley County commissioners to, see our future 20 years from now. There's another page in there that talks about where, kind of our mission statements, what we believe in, what we promote, and we believe in conserving the rural landscape of West Central Mountains. We really want to promote a community ethic that conserves its working agricultural properties in balance with thoughtful development. How do we dovetail those together? And then we envision areas of open access and encouraging people to be involved with their environment and understand it. And then we also believe in maintaining the pristine rivers and streams and waters, which honestly dovetails right into what Roy was talking about earlier today. That's a quick, basic, kind of view of the land trust that I wanted to present to you guys, and just have you ask questions about the land trust. If you've heard something or you want to know more about it, you can either ask me now or you can ask me in the future or email me. But I want to encourage everybody to continue to contact us directly, because I know sometimes it's hard to get the right information. So you got to go to the source, as you guys very well understand.
We deal with that all the time.
All the time. What I also put inside of that little packet is a copy of kind of what we do, what our roles are, the jobs of land trust conservation easements. That's just some information that you guys can have if somebody comes to you and says, you know, I heard this or I heard that. That's a quick reference. I don't know if you'll ever get asked that question, but I hand that out whenever I can.
I've sent quite a few people your way, actually.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I've gotten folks from all three of you actually that have come and talked to us. And I also put in there a little piece, and you may have seen this before from Headwaters Economics, but it was a study that they did up in Montana that just talks about the economic value of open space, being able to access public lands, why people move to a community, what's in it for them. And I think that, you know, it's obvious to everybody that Idaho is growing, but I think our region is growing. Montana is growing. Wyoming is growing. I think we're seeing Oregon grow as well. I grew up in Colorado, so I watched western areas grow, especially in the mountains. And it was just an interesting piece that I thought I would put in there that kind of breaks down why people move to areas like this, which then leads into you know, what I want to really talk about next, and that's what the Land Trust is actively doing. But before I get there, I wanted to say, are there any questions real quick about the basics of the trust?
The only thing I've never been able to confirm, somebody told me, I don't remember even where I heard it, but after 10 years, you guys can change an agreement. So if it's in perpetuity, it's in perpetuity.
It's in perpetuity.
You can't change it.
So within a conservation easement, there is the ability to amend a conservation easement, but it's the ability to amend little pieces of the terms, and you can't go away from the original intent. So if you had a conservation easement and we had set in stone a specific practice, so that you were going to, as an agricultural operation, and you know, this is what used to happen. We don't do this anymore because it's what got us in trouble, but was that you're going to plow that field and you're going to plant it exactly the same time every year. And then we find out that, or maybe it's cutting hay on a field and you're cutting it exactly the same time every year. And we find out that there's benefits to changing your practice. Best management practices has changed. You can go in and you can adjust those terms of the easement, but it can't go away from the original intent of it. You can adjust maybe a building envelope where you said, when we wrote it 25 years ago, I wanted to put a house on a hill. We realized that now it doesn't do us well to put a house on the hill on those 2 acres. It's better if we move it across on the other piece. If it doesn't impact the original conservation values that were intended to be conserved, then we go through and we amend it. Easement can be condemned if something has happened that is irrevocable. You know, you can't, it could be eminent domain. It could be something that you can't, you know, stop from happening. It could have been that there was a natural disaster that wiped out the whole reason for the easement. But all of those are very, very difficult. So the timeline, if it's in perpetuity, that's what we're in for, and we want it in perpetuity. So, but that's a good question.
So Craig, what's the biggest challenge? Just financing, money?
Yeah, it's the, and you very well know this, Chairman, it's dealing with land that has been in the hands of private owners for a long time that has gained value, gained equity as the county has changed, as land uses has changed around it. One of the only ways to get out of being land rich and cash poor is to sell your property. And most people sell it to the highest bidder. And in times like we're in now, those highest bidders are development, usually, or use, different use. And we start to see the pressures on the areas that we want to conserve the most. So you're fighting constantly against the dollar value. And it's not that we're anti-development, but I think there's places that probably shouldn't see development. If it's wet, those are areas worth really conserving. So all of the drainages, the wetlands, floodplains, rivers, lakes, things like that. But that's also where everybody wants to live. They want a house by the river. They want access to the lake, you know, things like that.
And so bluebirds in the house, a little house on the deck. They all want bluebirds too. I think, you know, that's something that the land trusts are going to have to maybe adjust a little bit because of the values of say this 30-acre parcel that you took the school kids on. Okay, if we could take 2 acres and sell that and take that money and go get another 150 acres or 100 acres in our conservation easement, to me, that would be a good investment.
And we do offer that up to folks where if they have a piece of property they want to donate to us that we can resell to go find another piece to conserve. We're in the midst of working on trying to develop an acquisition fund within the land trust. Right now, that's an outreach to private individuals. We're doing that as well as trying to fund staff positions. I can tell you I'm 3/4 time and I work about 1.5 times, as you guys very well know, in your positions. And I could have 5 people working for us in these counties. I'm turning projects down because we don't have the capacity to handle it. As an example, I've got 2 agricultural easements that came to us through a very lengthy process through the NRCS program. It's a farm bill program that actually pays for 50% of the easement. We've got 2 of those in Idaho County. It's going to bring back $2.2 million to those 2 landowners that they are using as succession planning. So it's allowing a young farmer to be able to reap the benefits of their development value within those farms. It's outside Cottonwood. It's between Cottonwood and Ferdinand. It's the Ulorn family. They have a piece of ground that their family bought in 1901. It's a century farm. And this young farmer is going to use that money to purchase it back from his great uncle and keep it in the family. It's right on 95. There's developments on either side of it. Those 2 easements, just to get into the application program, took me a year and a half to get them applied for. They were accepted. There were 3 in Idaho, 1 in Southeast, and these 2 out of the whole state. And then it'll take us another year and a half to get through the federal hoops to do it. So this stuff takes a really long time. So to have capacity, things like that is important. But without a acquisition portion, then pieces of property just scream by and we can't slow it down, put an easement on it, resell it.
Are you still a 501c3 though?
We are.
So you're probably getting foundations and that kind of stuff for income, for funds.
Yeah, so we do grant applications. We apply to anything and everything that we can to find applications. Right now, it's all been private donations. It's just been from the community. But that's starting to change. And one of my examples that I want to bring up is part of our Payette River Basin initiative. And I put that in your folder as well. And I think that ironically tied into what Roy was talking about. I didn't necessarily plan that. But as he was talking about water quality issues, the Payette Land Trust 2 years ago decided to look at the area in Valley County from that 30,000-foot view and say, what is one of our biggest issues? How are we going to try and focus our efforts? And it's the river, it's the drainage, it's our basin, because it's downstream users that are going to start to affect what we do upstream. I've been in agriculture most of my life, and as you well know, Chairman, it's water rights and water issues downstream. All regulation always comes back upstream because somebody's affected down there, and it's usually where water gets big and populations get big. And then they want to affect the people that are at the top of the watershed to do what they need to have it for them downstream.
That's exactly what happens with ours.
It's
It's all controlled by the Emmett Irrigation District.
And it's that way for everybody. It was that way in Nebraska. It was that way in Colorado. And we're at the head of the Payette River Basin is at the head of the Columbia River system. And they've got issues. And I was at a conference in Raleigh a year and a half ago, listening to Duke Energy talk about how they've had to spend 8 times what it would have cost to conserve it to rehabilitate the water system upstream from their nuclear power plant because the water was coming in too warm to cool their rods. And so what had happened was nobody paid attention to what was going on upstream. It was developed, the trees were cut down, the water temperature went up, And now they've had to come back and deal with it. From our standpoint, we're at the head of a fabulous watershed. We supply a lot of cool, clean water to everybody downstream from us. And if we have any deterioration, it's going to exacerbate everybody's problem downstream. And so we're going to start to see that come back. Now, that can be an advantage, though. I really think that could be an advantage, because if you start working on projects to conserve that, whether it's, you know, the water quality in a lake, or what Roy was talking about is over a whole system, or what we're trying to do from our little piece, which is work with landowners along these tributaries or main stems to conserve those riparian areas, conserve cover, all that kind of stuff, then you've got the ability to, 20 years from now, you know, continue to do that. Once you lose large areas to single homeowners, and again, I'm a single homeowner, so we all have to have a place to live.
Overlooking the river.
Right next to the river, yeah. Is that all of a sudden you don't deal with one landowner, you don't deal with one piece of ground, you deal with everybody that's got a lot. And it only takes one or two people to really stifle something that could benefit the whole community. So to get out ahead of it is incredibly important. I don't know what will happen on some of the projects that we do as far as land use 50 years from now, but we can set it up to know that it's probably not going to be a housing unit that could exacerbate water quality. You can't put a trail through somebody's backyard. So if we create corridors for movements, you can have trail systems. Animals don't move very well through heavily congested areas. So if we can keep agriculture in the valley, and I actually look at agriculture as a corridor, just like a wildlife corridor. If all four of us own ranches and Bigamon's weaning, we all know that his cows are going to make a lot of noise when he's doing it, or you're combining or whatnot till the middle of the night. We all get it. But if Commissioner Bingaman sells out and becomes a housing development, and you try and wean and you try and combine, then we've got an issue with that. But then we've also taken away a viewshed corridor. We've also taken away a migratory corridor. So there's all these different things that we can try and do within the valley to balance it out, because I think that the economics are going to bring people. Development will happen, and that's okay. But I think it's now a good time for us to look at what are the areas we want to conserve.
Well, and the other issue is he's going to subdivide all these pieces of ground, but before he does that, he's going to put a mountain bike trail on all of us that we have to deal with.
Very well could be.
From your lips to God's ears.
My agenda is plain.
So it's all of those kind of things that we are constantly thinking about at Land Trust. And that's why we came up with the Payette River Basin Initiative, and that was to take a look at how can we affect the Payette River Basin in a positive light, and also dovetail that into things that are already happening. And so you'll see in here that we went through and tied into some of the goals and objectives of the Valley County Comprehensive Plan. Because again, we want to be partners, we want to work together. And I think if we're bringing in the land trust community and working with private landowners and providing opportunities that counties can't do, cities can't do, federal government can't do, then we can get closer to having a connected corridor, from Payette Lake Inlet all the way down to Cabarton. And we do that, we have access to the river, we have recreational opportunities, we have opportunities for clean water. There's a lot of benefits to that, but I think if we don't come together to start looking at this, we're going to see those segments disappear. So with that, on the back page, there are 3 project areas that the Payette Land Trust kind of sectioned out as our top priorities. And I kind of talked about conserving the agricultural heritage within the basin already. I think that's hugely important. There's a lot of landowners here that are in agriculture that have a land ethic that we would like to see taken into the future. And can we find ways to keep agriculture viable? I not only talk to farmers and ranchers about this, but we talk to folks who want to see local food. And even if you have an opinion on commercial agriculture, you're never going to have local food if it doesn't stay in ag now. If it becomes a development, then you can't come in and raise local foods. You can't have community gardens. You can't have small, farming operations that provide food for a farmer's market if there's no agricultural areas left. And I'll tell you what, you can go talk to people in Boise proper who have been trying to do that, and they've lost the ability to rent that ground because it's too expensive. So a conservation easement takes out that right to develop, and so it takes the pressure off, but it returns some value to the original landowner. So they were able to get paid, whether it's through a tax break or it's a program like the NRCS has, or we go out and we raise funds for them and we purchase easements if we have to, or properties. So I've kind of talked about that. The other one I want to talk about is the Payette River Access Project. And what we're looking at is trying to find ways to access the Payette River. It's almost all privately owned right up to the banks. And we're realizing that most of the access was through private ground, and with the change in trespassing laws, if somebody really wants to come down on that, there's going to be a lot of felons in Valley County. And I can attest to that because there's a piece right below my house that everybody pulls out on the Payette River, and it's all private. And if those folks wanted to, they could make everybody a trespasser. And yet we encourage people to get on the river. We have Payette Waterways, Payette Waterway Trail program. We encourage people to come up, recreate, boat, fish, float. And you can get on it up in McCall at the park, but you can't get out until you get down to, Smiley. Because even the one at Heinrich is on Simplot ground. You're trespassing going on there. So when we realized that, we started looking at pieces of property, and this is where it gets into a little bit more specific. So I wanted to show you guys one of the projects we're working on, and that's the map that you were starting to look at, this one here. This piece of property is a 44-acre piece. It was originally going to be Payette River Subdivision B, and then I think it was called 3, and then it was called something else at one point. But if you can see here, this is the Valley County Rail Trail. This is Payette River Sub 1. This is Sub 2. Buck Camp's over here. Black Hawk's on this side of it. For full disclosure, Karen and I live right here on the edge of this piece. And that's how we found out about this piece of property. Originally, it was slated to have 44 homes down there. The county has a long record with this piece of property that's kind of laid out in this Payette River Subdivision 3 timeline. Back in 1991, there was a CUP filed to actually fill in the floodplain to build down there. I'll let you guys read through it, but it went to the Idaho Supreme Court. The subdivision, Payette River Sub 1, took LBI Industries, I don't know what they were called at the time, to court and says you can't get a CUP to fill in a floodplain, which is pretty much what halted the development of this area down here. And it remained undeveloped for a long time. Fast forward to about a couple of years ago, the two folks that owned it passed away. It was Marv Whiteman and Larry Barnes. And then that went to his kids. There were 7 owners of it, and they couldn't decide what to do. The land trust offered to do an easement for a tax break. They didn't want it. They wanted to sell it. And they wanted to sell it to develop it the best they could. So the land trust went out and eventually found 2 conservation buyers and put a bid in on it with the intent to put a conservation easement and resell it to the community, with the caveat that it'll be open to the public. So it'll be privately owned still by the subdivisions. It'll be a community group that'll manage it because they've got issues with bugs and fire and all of that. But the land trust said, we'll help find some buyers for it, put a conservation easement on it. But one of the requirements is that we have access for the general public. What that did was that took from market value, and they had people looking at it. It was $1.2 million through conservation easements to being able to pay cash. All of that, we've reduced the property price down to $350,000 that the community will have to raise to purchase it back. So we took $850,000 of value out of this property, and now we're going to return it back to the community through fundraising at $350,000. It'll be 44 acres of access along the river. So that gets me to my next point. And again, stop me at any point if you have questions. I'm just rolling.
You're doing great, man. Just about out of time, but that's all right.
So what we've got going on with that is we went to McCall City Council, to their lot program, and said, we think you have some responsibility. You ask people to get in at the park next to the smoke jumper base. We need to acquire this piece to allow people to get out. We applied for $50,000 from McCall lot program. We received 25 with a contingency, 25,000 with a contingency of another 25,000 if their lot gets to that point. So we've started the fundraising on that. I would, at some point in the future, I've never asked the county for funds, so I don't know how that exactly would work for something like this, but I would like to ask the county to participate in this as well, through whatever means and funding sources that are available. I would like to put in, whether it's a grant or a request in the future. We're going to be fundraising for this over the next year. We have the ability to take those grant or commitments, into the future under written agreement with the land trust, and then we'll go find a bridge loan when it comes time to actually purchase the property, and then we can hold that until the grants become available, as long as we have those commitments. The other project that we are working on is the Payette Lake Conservation Project, and we've been involved with that for 2 years, which has now morphed into the things with Trident and a lot bigger issues. But I definitely believe that has brought out a lot of folks' concerns about conservation and land use and access in the area, especially on the heels of the Wilkes brothers' purchase of their private property, and now folks are starting to feel that they're losing what they once had, even if they didn't actually have it. So we've been involved with that before Trident came along, and now we're involved, even more so. Our part to play in this is probably through easements, if easements are available. We work with the landowners, so right now it's IDLs and the endowment that are the landowners, and we've talked to them about, would you be willing to do easements in perpetuity on certain parts? So a lot of conversations going back and forth about that. I think they've been holding off because they want to see what their plans are. They want to hear what Trident has to say. I would concur with what Roy said earlier today. I've heard the same thing. The November meeting is going to have a lot of interesting issues on it when it comes to endowment. But we've spoken with the governor a few times now on this. We've spoken with the IDL and the Secretary of State just about how the land trust can play a part in that. COVID hit, Trident came out, we kind of backed off at that point with the other land board members, and we're kind of waiting to see what happens, because we're here in perpetuity. We know it's not going to happen quickly. The conversations might happen quickly, but I don't know if the land issues will happen quickly. It's a government agency. But we wanted to let them know that I think there's a third option. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to trade it. You can put a conservation easement on it. They can still do timber. They can still do recreation. They can still contract with Idaho Fish and Game. All we're interested in is development rights. We believe that if they can withhold a right as they sell the property with mineral rights, that you could also then reverse that, and you could section off that right and sell it out. And it doesn't have to be a terminal sale, like a full-on property sale, because they retain the rights. The state will retain mineral rights on certain properties that they do sell or trade. So they've done it before. They also have a state program called Forest Legacy, which encourages people to put easements of perpetuity on timber ground. And they have actually held or purchased, I believe they purchased a few pieces of property that had those types of easements on it. So it's not all together out the window. They just have to decide if they want to do it.
So Greg, when you're talking about withholding development rights, so how do they sell the development rights there and not use them on that property?
That it's the same as what we would do on a private landowner easement. You have the right to, so if it's your piece of property, you have the right to do an agreement with the Payette Land Trust where, in the case of a donated conservation easement, you would donate your development rights to the Payette Land Trust, and through that easement, we extinguish those in perpetuity, so nobody would ever build on whatever property we've decided that. You can also take that, define it, and sell those rights. In the case that we've dealt with, mostly somebody donates those rights to us, but you can actually sell the right to develop to us. We would purchase it and then we would extinguish it.
So how does that meet their fiscal responsibility?
They just got paid the same as if they were to sell the property, but they didn't actually sell the property.
Where it really kicks in is if you had, a big chunk of ground and you sold part of it, you could put this part in the development or restricted development. And if you get paid for it, or if you donate it, then you can use that difference in value to write off against this income that you sold for. So you don't pay it on taxes.
So
But
from
the
a,
state doesn't pay taxes. That's
but
why
from
I'm
a, from the endowment standpoint, they need to generate funds for their property. And one of the only ways to really generate the development value right now for their property is to sell it. So then they've outright sold the whole property. We're saying that instead of selling the property, because when you sell the property, you also lose the ability to cut it for timber, to do an access easement for trails, for recreation, for whatever else that you wanted to do with that. What we're saying is you just sell us the development rights. We'll pay you for those rights. It's just a one-time sale of those rights. And then the Payette Land Trust or whatever entity holds the easement, holds those in perpetuity. Now, the IDL can sell that property, but they'll sell it at a value that's only based on timber or ag or whatever it is. They can still do timber management as long as it fit within the easement's plan. They can do recreation as long as it fits within the plan, which would be to conserve, water quality, things like that. So, and then it's a way for the endowment to continue to hold land in their portfolio, just like they do now, but they've been able to gain value without having to go through all the necessary arrangements of actually selling a piece of property. So there are some advantages.
Well, and then you got a lot of landowners out here that have no heirs.
Yep.
That are my age or older that would like to get something out of it without having to sell it. And it's a great way to get kind of ownership of that ground, and they get some money to go have retirement fund on, and everybody's happy. And that's what I concentrated on when we started this, was meeting those landowners that didn't have heirs. What are you going to do with this ground? Where's it going to go afterwards? And it's amazing some of the comments you get from these folks.
like that.
We've
And the large guys, like, the simple, I mean, who into the future is gonna do all of that? I mean, the Bettis properties, I mean, there's a lot of ground in Valley County. I mean, we only have 8% private ground to develop in the future. And a lot of that is large land holdings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be really sensitive, to where development is going to occur here, because I would love to see those large land holdings remain open forever.
Yeah.
And be our viewscape, but
And you can see how this can dovetail into development if you look at Blackhawk.
Yeah.
So there's 365 acres of wetland habitat over there that was conserved along the river that had development value, and it brought value to the landowners around it. There are so many studies that talk about the value of the land that's around the edge of the conserved piece of property. And then you put a trail in, it goes up even more. And then if you put a trail into a connected trail system, it goes up even more. And then if that trail system actually goes somewhere, it goes up even more. But all of that has to be part of a bigger vision. And as Chairman said, you could take a piece of property and maybe you do a non-development easement on all the wetland areas or certain area that landowner really wants to see conserved. And you put in development envelopes in other areas. They can still sell it, we can divide that, but now we've said we found this one spot that we really wanted to conserve in perpetuity over time. And that tax break, they can turn around and sell that property, and somebody comes in and they're like, I want that 2 acres that's surrounded by 40 that's not gonna be developed. And
Oh, it's huge.
bring a higher price.
Oh,
yeah.
huge.
So if the chairman does that, and now he's got 15 years of a tax write-off, and he sold his property, but he leaves knowing that that piece is going to stay undeveloped. And in agriculture, if that's what it is, or if it's a wetland area, it stays in that. There is a variety of things that we can do. So it's definitely not a pigeonhole type scenario, but it takes time, takes people, and takes understanding. And so that's the main reason why wanted some time with you guys today is, as we move forward with this, as the Payette Land Trust grows, as these issues continue to grow about how do we balance conservation and development, there are going to be crossovers. You know, pieces like this 44 acres gives a lot of people access to the river. It conserves water quality because it's in a floodplain. It starts to provide another piece of conserved property. It's only a half mile upstream from our other conservation easement. It may link it into a piece of Simplot ground or a piece of BLM ground. If we can get those folks to agree to that, then now you've got a loop trail through it. And then we can show to Sullen family on the other side of the river that we can still do ag, you can still run your sheep, but we're gonna conserve this corridor and you get a benefit from it. Can we put a trail through here just in this piece? And then you do a designated trail access easement. But it has to start somewhere. And so we picked that 144 acre piece.
And Land Trust, it was a great idea. I mean, they're an awesome idea, especially for doing trails. Especially, you know, like mountain bike along the river or something like
Yeah,
that.
greenbelt style trails.
Otherwise, you can't go in there as an individual and say, hey, I want to do this. I'll give you some money. It just doesn't work. But where in Land Trust, they can do it. And then the other issue is that people want to donate their millions on their death to somewhere. And that's a pretty popular thing now.
Now I was trying to get you guys to partner with the housing trust. And I couldn't get Rick to marry that up, but I said, you know, the land trust, there's gonna be the end of wheel line somewhere that could be developed into housing if people were to develop just those sections of it and leave the rest of it in.
We've actually talked to a few people about that. I think we're at the top of a market, and so the dollar signs kind of pile up a little quicker than the charitable part of it. Land trusts usually see a little more movement when you start to see that you've crested a market and you're on the downside and you're like, oh, speculation isn't going to.
I'm not going to live long enough till the next upcycle.
To the next upcycle. So how do we develop this out? And I think that there are places as we go forward with housing where you do see consolidation. I believe it was the Wood River Land Trust. There was going to be development throughout this valley system of 1 to 5 acre plots. And what they ended up deciding to do was consolidate at the bottom of the valley. And everybody had smaller pieces, but they were able to conserve the whole upper valley and they put a trail system in. And it sold it out because they changed their mindset. So I think
and probably for more money.
Probably, you know.
Usually it's more money.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You ever get over the Tetons and some of those places over there? My gosh, the money they've spent on that is awesome. Beautiful. They protected their open space.
It's interesting too, because we kind of have, I think, a mindset in Valley County of still, I don't want a trail in my backyard, but everywhere else that you go where they have developed trail systems or that access that Craig was talking about, is it actually increases the value of the property over time. It becomes much more desirable, you know, if you're going to, you know, bend and you're like, oh, there's this accesses all the trails behind my house.
And we're seeing that
It
more
does.
places like that. The valley is seeing those, the push for that, but you have to be 20 years out ahead of it. In the land trust business, you needed to be working 20 years ago.
I'm really interested, I mean, we all are, but in what we can do on that ideal ground. You know, what are the options up there, and Dave's got some ideas.
Well, I was gonna say, sorry. I was just gonna say, I see the IDL ground is kind of like the first thing that we need to focus on because it's a big issue right now. But the bigger picture item is like thinking of ways we could work with the land trust in the future. You know, land water conservation fund being funded is going to allow local governments to apply for funding for land acquisition. And I think that there's an opportunity for partnership, you know, especially
there's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get millions out of something like that, but I mean, we could get a couple 100,000 out of something like that.
We can't apply for that. We have to,
right.
For land and water conservation fund, it has to come through a public entity. So we would have to partner with you. But what we can do is we can look at a piece of property that right now is just like this 44 acres that was market value was way out of range. There's no way you're going to get a 1.2 million in a grant for 44 acres, but you can get 350. But that took us being able to drop it in the private sector and provide the tax write-off or fundraising or whatever it happens to be, and then we're left with the 350. The one thing that the land trust doesn't want to do is we don't really want to own the property. We're actually in the business of stewarding the easement, the deeded easement on the property. So property ownership becomes an issue because who wants to own it when you can't build on it anymore? You know?
Yeah, they're still paying taxes.
Is that whole thing going to be dedicated back? Isn't there 2 lots that are gonna go on there?
The 2 lots will have they will do the non-development conservation easement on those 2 lots. That's where they receive their
So no
value.
housing at all?
So there won't be any housing at all, it'll be all of it.
Full disclosure, I had some real estate business right beside there, so.
And we've talked with those folks.
Okay, awesome.
Craig, we're out of time.
You bet.
Thank you so much for
Ray's got
coming in.
15 more minutes.
Oh, you're right,
Oh,
sorry.
do I?
Those little glasses that.
Put those damn glasses back
Little
on.
numbers.
Yeah, you got
Mr. Rutter,
another.
can I ask a question regarding that 44 acres? Is it the intent of the land trust to create a park there?
No, it is not the intent of the land trust to create a park. What our intent, and I'm mincing some things, but I'll play it out. The intent of the land trust is to conserve that area from being developed into a subdivision. Now, what we've done is we've helped the neighborhood create what's going to be called the Payette Riverwalk Alliance. And they will actually own the fee title. So they've created a nonprofit to manage that property. And it's more than just a park. It sits on the edge of these housing subdivisions up on a hill, and there's a significant fire danger that they have never been able to go in and manage for. So there's fire management, there's weed management, and there's bug management, and then there's access as well. So the Payette Riverwalk Alliance is a community group that's actually going to own and manage it. We'll have some restrictions put on it by us, which is no development, has to be public access, non-motorized. You can't, do commercial activity down there. But if they want to find grants to restore some of the disturbed ground down there and recreate it in its natural habitat and put a trail system in there, more than happy to do that.
But they couldn't go in and build a parking lot.
No.
Bathrooms and all that stuff.
We actually did. There's a septic system that goes. There's a sewer system that goes down through there under the river and over to Black Hawk. And we through some negotiations have 2 sewer hookups for that. That if they choose in the future that they wanted to put a bathroom in there, they could. But that would be up to the Payette Riverwalk Alliance. We tried to think ahead for that.
That's so cool.
Well, I was gonna say, one of the problems is in that area, and you can run with this, but is that you're trying to kind of big picture is create a river access point for people coming downstream from like Larda's Dam or from the Smoke Jumper Base. But there's no parking there.
Yeah.
And so trying to create a place to get in and out of the river, and that maybe is the challenge.
So
for that spot.
There is a challenge with that. And actually on that map, there is a piece of ground that the county actually owns right opposite where the road goes down to the river. It's on Moon Ridge. It would be on the south side of Moon Ridge, right at the base of Tranquility. And I think it was vacated to the county when they did Moon Ridge. And there's enough places for 3 cars. So at some point when we get the fundraising and they actually own this property, we would want to come back to the county and say, can we put a parking lot in here for 3 spots? And it would be transitional parking like what Dave was talking about. You come down with we'll put a bike rack in there, a couple of parking spots. You can,
It's amazing what the county owns.
yeah, it's just this little chunk in there.
Is it part of the road?
It is, yeah, I think it was.
I'll go and do it. Paris.
Yeah, it's actually, it's that little piece right there, yeah. It's actually, you own this whole piece right here. So what we look at is
So it's in the
that.
middle of the road though, right?
No, it's on the south side of the road.
So that's that little strip that goes up to Tranquility?
Yeah.
This little green strip right here?
It would be, it's like this little strip right here.
Yep.
And so there's that opportunity to do those kind of things to partner with the county.
You can only get 3 cars in there?
There's a box in there, and there's tree and it drops off into a ditch. But the thing about that is that it's gonna hopefully be part of a bigger picture. The next section to this, we'd cross our fingers, but there's about 5 landowners in Buck Camp. If we could get a trail access easement through that, then it gets to Simplot, gets to BLM, and it gets to Heinrich. There's a lot of work to be done with that, but if you get there, then you can park at the activity barn where we already have parking, get on the rail system trail, ride through the subdivision down along the river, come out of Heinrich and come back. Or you can get on part of the single track, and be a part of it. And that's kind of what we envision, is trying to conserve a larger chunk of ground, but also allow for a piece of public access. And you can start to put those little pieces in. We're working with Tommy Alquist right now to open up, he bought the southern part of the Blackhawk holdings that kind of go from Blackhawk Lake down to Haight Lane. He's got everything between West Mountain and the river, and we've got an easement on that, and we're working with him to try and open up a trail where you'd be able to park off of Haight Lane.
So actually, Kara has that is part of that original parcel, Gems of the Kinds. It actually comes clear over.
Yeah, and that was, we'll have to figure that out, because there was a question about that. Maybe it is actually now part of that. Anyway, there's things like that that'll come up in the future once we actually get to that portion of the project. Or the piece off of Haight Lane, or if we're able to work with Simplot to get down to the river, how do we handle those? Can we work with the county to build a road or provide fill material or funding or whatever it is? I don't know. But the whole point is that there's a lot of opportunities that I don't think we've explored yet.
I was saying, one of the things that Craig and I discussed too is that having Mary Rosen now here gives us the opportunity to apply for some of those grants that they can't apply for. And I think that's, one of the areas that we could really help him out is, having the ability for him to work with Mary on some of the grants that could help us with the conservation front.
Well, and then you brought the thing to us, I think, a while back about the county, Blaine County actually levied for development rights, and it lasted, looked to me like about 2 years. And then it went away. Do you know why it went away?
I'm not sure why it went away.
Was there public
I think
outrage?
it was a temporary levy. It wasn't a.
Was it written into the
There's an
language?
override levy.
Probably
Right.
maybe it's sunsetted or something.
Yeah.
We know, and I don't know the depth of this, but within state statute, there's development fees. It's I don't have that right in front of me.
I think, Craig, I'll be honest, until we can fix our roads, there's no way we're gonna be buying trail systems. So we have a huge liability on our roads, but Mary's contribution to the whole thing with being able to write grants and that kind of thing is going to be a lot larger than, there may be some work in kind or something from the road department or being able to supply something. But in order to go after any kind of levies or any kind of funding structure, that has to be reserved for the road department until we figure out stable funding there. That's my opinion, but.
I'm glad you said that.
Race back. Forgot his wallet.
Uh-oh, forgot his computer. Laptop.
Oh, no.
We were wondering whose that was.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're hearing from Craig. We've heard all good things today from you guys.
And I don't know what the future is on that, Commissioner. There are a lot of areas yet to be explored. And we don't know what kind of funding that counties will have access to when it's tied to water quality or tied to conservation or tied to something like that. That you can access, but you couldn't use for roads or recreation. This is economic development too. So there's all kinds of things like that. And we're working with MCAR on this because the Realty Association, because it brings value to the whole community. So you don't know what we're gonna see. I don't know what we're gonna see. And that's why we're here talking, is that light bulbs go off and different connections get made, and then you find that you can apply for something that helps get you there. But I also know that this is part of what Valley County Comprehensive Plan wants. So if we can find a place to actually put that plan to motion in conjunction with the land trust and make it a reasonable partnership where we can reduce the costs of meeting your plan, that's stuff that we haven't even talked about. And yet you go through it and there are so many things that cross over.
Craig, how hard is it to get, like, and I know it's on federal land, Forest Service, BLM, Bureau Rec, is it hard to go in there and just do a trail system on them? You don't need to do an easement. It's probably a NEPA process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we have up and down the river from, I think I don't know if there's any, I think it's all from Cascade clear to Horseshoe Bend. If you ever look at a map, BLM owns chunks opposite each other on the river, and they were supposed to be future dam sites, which is never going to happen on a wild scenic river. And I keep thinking, why don't you guys get rid of this ground? There's no need to own it anymore. And they have started selling some, but like in my river bottom, the guy north of me, half of his river bottom is BLM. And they've gone in and made him fence it off and keep the cattle out and all that stuff because he was overgrazing and destroy it. But I'm thinking there's an option that or a possibility we need to tie up that access through at least public land now before those get sold.
And it's just not the BLM, but then the part of the BOR, because then you're linking all of these, but there's usually a piece of private in between. So like what you're saying is picking apart those little chunks in there where you can then create a connected corridor. And that loops us all the way back around, Chairman, to why we decided to look at it from this standpoint.
A bigger picture.
It's a bigger picture, because when you go to BLM and say, you can be a part of this bigger picture and you can meet your requirements as well. Can we do a memorandum of understanding? Can we do just a trail easement through where we're not talking about the whole piece, but we just want to go through? And there are areas that they're doing that. I think Avamore has one with the BLM to get through to another piece. And that gets into the whole other issue of how do you access your public lands that are surrounded by private? And we can come in through conservation easements and allow for a corridor. We can do the tax benefit conservation easement on 95% of a piece of property and then only leave that corridor open for public access. And that's what we're doing with Tommy. It's fenced out, it's designed. You can see that this is the only place you can go. And it's all posted, but it allows people to pass through. And he's like, I'm not gonna see them, I don't care. We need people to go up and down the river, that's okay. So if we can create more and more of those, then we start connecting those pieces. Like I said, we're about 20 years behind. And we don't have to put the trail in right away, but if you don't get it conserved.
It's better than 20 years from now.
Right, because if there's a lawn in the middle of it, you're never gonna go through.
Right.
Do you think Pathways has started working with BOR on some of the stuff that's close in down here, like into the Crown Point Trail?
Yeah.
So.
Well, even if you look at the Payette River from Cascade South, that thing has changed its course so much now that we have islands.
Yep.
Out in the middle of the river. Who owns those islands? We have landowners that, well, that used to be mine and now it's washed away and,
I think
it's nobody's land.
Yeah, I think if it's actually an island in the middle of the river, the state owns it.
Yep.
They can lay claim to that.
Yep.
Um,
And then another 100 years, it washes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the rivers move back over to the other side in 100 years.
When I hear the endowment lands, that the board is gonna make decisions in November, it just starts making me anxious. It's kind of like, we're out of time. And I don't know how in the next month we try and impact and put this commission's, firm support behind maintaining that as endowment lands or, quarter or anything else. I don't know if there's gonna be a coordinated letter or what we can do. But that's what Ray said too. We're hearing it's November is the big plan. Well, how do we have input to that plan?
I think that was kind of the goal of the city of McCall joint meeting with our commission.
Yeah. But
Yes.
we're almost too late, November 17th.
Well, we still have an opportunity to meet with them and then formulate a statement, hopefully a joint statement or at least a shared vision.
Did you get a date yet?
I haven't gotten a date from the city yet. They were looking at, I said we need this by the first week in November so that we can generate comments and letters from both entities and get them in.
So the draft plan will come out at the land board meeting in November, and then they want to vote on it
December.
in December. I believe Trident will make their informational proposal in November. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I hear. And I don't think it's a solid proposal. My understanding, it's still in the informational stage. And then you'll start to see, by December, we'll know by November, we'll know what IDL is thinking. Because we've asked those questions and I haven't seen the plan. And I met with them 3 times. So we'll see what it is, and then everybody's going to have a month to comment on it. My guess is that there's not going to be a whole lot of change in IDL's plan. Most of it's timber ground. It's probably going to stay managed as timber ground.
For now.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about the plan as it is, so I think they're going to say we're going to manage it as timber. And then I think the concern will be, what pieces do they want to dispose of? I think they're probably going to continue with the sales that they had talked about previous, all of this, which is a lot of the cottage sites, maybe that piece on Geinhardt. The airport's been dumping all the dirt in. That one's logical for them to get rid of. So whatever they've got in their plan of disposals, we'll see that. But that's what I'm anticipating seeing, is that the majority of it will probably stay in timber for now. But it also gives them the opportunity to change their mind over time. So I think it's an ongoing process.
And I think it's important that they hear from folks up here, and they'll hear from folks up here, not just us, how we feel about it, and that's going to be a big influence. I know Governor Little has kind of some personal ties to McCall, and he's already come out and stated that. I don't know if we're going to do that, because that's kind of one of my favorite areas, so to speak. So
my biggest concern is that that they will get pressure to supply more money into the educational system. And then you always go wherever your biggest bang for the buck is. And so what I hope they don't do is just find ways to sell properties off.
Well, they just banked $530 million in surplus. How much do you need?
Well, I think that's so that's where it gets troublesome, is I believe that's in their land banks. They have to purchase properties with it versus what they can actually disperse to their beneficiaries. So there's that lag time in there. And I don't know how all that stuff ends up working out. What I have learned about it is it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's a quasi-public, quasi-private, profit-oriented organization.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Got us all caught up.
We'll keep up to date. You guys ask me any questions that you have about the land trust, and I'll come back on at some point and give you another update.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Terry.
guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to move right on down our agenda. The next item is an action item. We need to approve the certifications on the tax bills for North Lake Water and Sewer and Payette Lake Water and Sewer. Mr. Gabe, long time no see, bud. How you been?
Been doing good. How about you?
Well, trying to keep up with all of it.
Conservation. And recreation.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, Commissioners and Clerk Miller. We've got, I did receive requests to certify delinquent bills from both North Lake Recreational Water and Sewer and Payette Lakes Recreational Water and Sewer Districts. You should have received a copy of those by email today, I believe.
Today from you?
We did.
It would have been from Ashley today. So, this is pretty normal. Thank goodness we don't have all those Tamarack properties on here anymore. That was a long list in past years, but typically each year, each of these districts will have a handful that they want to certify to the tax rolls.
So she sent it to the group commissioner email. I don't know if you got that
See if
one.
I know. I don't have.
It's under the Valley County Commissioner.
Yep. Let me look.
Stuff. If you want, I'll forward it on to you.
I think I can get it here. Nope, you can't. Have it up, but I don't have anything from Ashley.
I can,
will just forward it to you right now.
I can bring it
Oh,
hard.
there it is. It's under,
It's like $12,000 on the south end and 7,000 something on the north end up there.
That's, North Lake did have, they had 127,000.
127,847.
And Payette Lakes was just over 7,000.
Whitewater Hotel. So Gabe, what we're doing today is we're saying, yeah, you got the right numbers, go for it.
Just, we're not even confirming the numbers. We're just, the motion would be just to approve the certification of these figures to the 2020 tax rolls.
Oh, I see.
It's-
So then you put it on the taxes and they have to pay them that way.
Right. It's the district's responsibility to provide accurate numbers. So
And then if they don't pay them on the tax roll,
handled just like property taxes. So there'd be penalties and interest and, go through the whole process.
So I would entertain a motion then to approve the certifications on the tax bills for North Lake and Payette Lake Water and Sewer.
So moved.
second.
Who did say? Any more discussion? I'm amazed people don't pay their.
Where's the Whitewater Hotel? All right,
I don't know.
$4,000? We'd have to get a tax bill like that.
Some of those could be LIDs, in addition to,
Well, it's gotta be in the Donnelly or North Lake. Where's the Whitewater Hotel?
Tamarack, doesn't it?
You got Tamarack?
Steelhead Court?
bag. I believe that is Tamarack.
Oh, it's Steelhead Court.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Nothing to sign or do or on our part.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We got 7 minutes till our next agenda item. If you need a break, which I do. Hey, girl. Hey. Be right back.
Been in court all day?
Yes.
I gotta start calling in next month. I'm on jury duty for the next 2 months.
I set a trial today for December, so.
Thanks a lot. Can you push them out a little bit for me?
The last time Bill got jury duty, he got bumped because he sets the salaries for the parties involved.
Oh,
So,
got it.
you know, so unless there's a civil trial.
They told me last time, they said, you will never serve, nobody ever, there's never any trials up here. It's here for 2 weeks. That's what the
We
bank,
have a trial starting tomorrow.
yeah, that's
So
what Doug
the
said.
trial starting tomorrow, so I set one for December 15th, but, you know, it's a criminal trial. So since you set the budgets, the judge did it on it. I mean, that's out of conflict. So I don't know on the civil side, there isn't any civil trials until after the first of the year. So, or if you get called, they're gonna accuse you right away.
Thank you. Cinda, have you ever heard of a Whitewater Hotel up at?
Yeah.
At
Tamarack?
Tamarack? What is it? Is it something up there? I mean, is it already up there? Is it built? Bag Property Holdings.
Huh?
They just had an $84,000 tax bill from North Lake, so.
Yeah, it was there by the Members Lodge, I think. I think that was the one. It was, I'm not sure if it ever got finalized. The plat, because there's always condos associated. It was either that one or the one up by where the store was.
Didn't realize there was anything up there like that, so.
So I was in the ski business from 72.
Did RC take over for you, Larry?
RC, when they took me into the land planning job, and they hired RC, there was a lot of those. Then I took the 400 acres through all the planning, zoning, design. The town is all approved. The community bigger than any other county. And it's there.
And I need time with you on Wednesday. Just to ask some questions on, trying to do that subdivision out there on Lake Fork.
Did this come in our packet? The,
It wasn't in the
yeah, it wasn't in the packet, it was from you.
I'm trying to get the practical conclusions for statistics facilities to get today. I should have them.
Oh, when did you send them, Cinda? Oh, that's the ordinance.
Roughly.
Is it the gathering? The
No,
gathering
it's-
of fuel?
EP.
Yeah, haven't that inbox either.
Not seeing it.
Thursday?
Thursday?
Okay,
It was actually October 14th.
the 14th. Try to get stuff to you as quick as I can.
And then I try and put them in a separate folder, so I have it all together. It doesn't always make it.
Yeah.
I did too, but I
How
read
come
this
I
and it didn't
can't
fit in
find
the
this
folder.
stuff, Doug? I'm just getting too
You
old.
know, I
to read
remember
it.
seeing it, so
It's
I know
under
I
your
have it, but.
commissioners.
Did we get any follow-up on the badges for cleaning?
No. I asked David to look into it, so.
So, can I ask
Thanks,
a
Doug.
question? Did you find it?
Yep.
Doug just sent it again.
So this North Fork Payette River water quality thing, is this stuff that they're trying to take to the legislature to adopt?
Mm-hmm.
So new stuff, because these numbers are already taken under, for other things,
What do you mean the numbers?
these statute numbers, the 6605, and I was looking in Idaho statutes, these numbers are already used.
Oh,
So is this something that'll be similar to the Payette Lake?
Oh,
So
oh,
on, they don't actually even assign a number until they get a bill sponsor, and then they assign the bill numbers. So those statutes are probably just the ones that were referenced from before.
Because, yeah, they're totally different. What's in the paragraph is totally different than what already exists. Like what's called the council, this is called the, I mean, this is new legislation being proposed.
it is.
We'll read it with that in mind. Like, I'm trying to
And
fit
read
it.
it in mind with us putting out our RFP. You see those two things go together. On the 4 o'clock, I think we have a large contingency coming. It's not just one.
Is that the road?
Mm-hmm.
I got a phone call yesterday. Tells me we're not gonna miss it. I painted all weekend.
Did you, oh,
My shoulder is just like stuck. No wrong spot.
painting makes me cry. I pick up a paper and it's like,
It's fun for about 20 minutes. That's when you get into the little like, okay, it just took me 20 minutes to go this far underneath the window. That's when it starts getting a little monotonous.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our next agenda item, which is an action item. This is clarification of conditions of approval for conditional use permit 20-09. And Cinda has sent those to us. Everybody good with those?
Well, these have been negotiated between both parties.
Yes, Steve Melman and Don Logic were counsel for Larry Shake and Dusty Bittner, VP Properties. And they all agreed that this clarification did not change the substance of what you originally approved in your hearing and then approved as part of your facts and conclusions. So we do not need to set another public hearing. They just wanted this clarification in how those conditions were put into effect.
And you saw the second email that talked about the verbiage.
Yes, I need to change 13 to not more than 15 feet apart. But I don't think anything in here changed the substance of what you already approved. My opinion.
Negotiated this, I'm fine with it.
And then if you allow me to record the amended conditional use permit, then they will withdraw their legal action.
Just as long as both sides agree to this, I don't have an issue with any of it, Cinda, I guess. Carol, you want to add something? Looks like it.
No, I was just going to say that Larry Shake and his wife, through counsel, and filed a pro se, but they timely preserved their right to a petition for judicial review. So it's pending right now. I didn't answer it yet because I knew these negotiations had been going on. I just spoke with Steve Milliman about an hour ago, and he said, yes, they're very happy with these, and Larry Shake is here, and he's very happy with those and said it was the product of quite a bit of negotiations. So they're very happy that the board is receptive to the changes that they've agreed that are appropriate. So it would be my recommendation that you approve this.
Thank you. And I guess I want to stress a little bit here, Larry, that I think this process works the best because you were able to come in and have an influence on the outcome of that. I know that some people don't agree with that multi-use concept, but I think this is a great example of how it can work. Just my own personal feelings. So I would entertain a motion then to approve these clarifications of conditions of approval.
Move to approve the conditional use permit 20-09 clarification of conditions of approval.
Can you say that 3 times?
No.
It's late in the day.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Everybody good? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Okay, I will get that changed and recorded.
Thank you. And then based on that, I've been assured that the parties are going to withdraw that legal action. So I just provide you notice when that happens.
Great, thank you, Carol. Okay, we have 12 minutes until our next agenda item. Carol, you got a second? We had a discussion today. You guys helped me out here. Was it on the pickleball that we wanted clarification from her on parking? What was it?
We talked
I think
about
it was
parking,
all-
but I think that was, oh, go ahead.
I think it was
You
the
recorded it.
entirety of the MOU. We don't know if prosecuting attorney had the ability to review that, make
I
recommend.
sent you all,
She sent us,
I sent you an.
I went back through and looked
included.
at that. Yeah, I
like
forgot that you
15.
couldn't edit it, so you had sent us
Right,
the
so I sent
list,
you all
yeah.
the questions that I had about what was happening.
So we just had Larry add an opt-out
There
condition.
wasn't an
He
opt-out.
told me that, and my concern about that is that if you put those in there, what happens to the stuff? And that was the one thing that I mentioned to him today. Let's say you decide you don't want that on that location anymore, and you want to reclaim that property. You know, is there any financial remuneration to the club since they built that and you're gonna tear it down?
In other places, I mean, like, for instance, with IDL, yes. I mean, they paid for upgrades to the site for their wedding venue out on East Side Drive.
Right, I mean, so to reclaim it, that was what my
Right.
concern was that if we were ever gonna go back and say, okay, we don't want this anymore, who pays to reclaim the property in the original condition? So that wasn't in that.
So you're suggesting that we put that in an MOU that any expenses that they incur will be reimbursed if this site is?
I don't think, I mean, if that's what you wanna do.
I don't know if I want to do
If you
that, no.
reclaim your site, you know, are you gonna require them to put it back the way it was, or are you gonna pay for that?
Oh, I
That's
see.
what my question is, who pays for that if you
And then
reclaim that site?
The other concern I had was we need to renew this every year. It can't be for 20 or
Right.
25 years.
So
And
this
that
is-
wasn't in there as well.
So this is what he added and wants approval.
He told me, he sent it to me, I just haven't had a chance to review it,
Okay,
he said he
great.
sent something.
I
And
guess
then-
we're not gonna review it until next week. so-
Yeah, he said you guys were gonna do that next week. My only concern too, again, and I've written that in there just because it's a pretty significant county asset, whether you were to have either a workshop or public hearings on that before you committed the acreage, but again, that's.
Nope, we committed the acreage today.
So you're saying
To
we
me,
should
it's
have a
not
public
permanent
hearing?
structure.
No, it's not required. You,
Okay.
you have a fiduciary duty to maintain and, to the best of, the ability for the taxpayers, whatever their assets are. And if you think that's the best use and you didn't want it, but that's fine. You have the right to do that.
So we're retaining that ground, this Valley County
Right.
ground. So
Right.
we're allowing them to come in and put an asset onto it.
Right.
And run it, and there's no cost associated
Right.
to it.
Well,
So-
that was one of my other questions, because I asked about the ICRIM. But when I first took over, I went down and visited with ICRIM about Wellington, and I was just concerned because we have an insurance policy there, and it's covered as long as we aren't a commercial operation. That's where I was wanting to make sure we just didn't turn it into a commercial operation. So, so in that case, I think ICRIM will cover, but I think we should ask that question before you.
So a
So
commercial
if we-
operation would be if we were charging for a lease, so we can't charge for a lease of that property.
Or if we went to Wellington and started charging a mandatory fee to camp,
Or parking fees, that was.
Parking fees,
remember
yeah.
the parking fees that come up on, land swap areas, then it becomes commercial and your insurance is entirely different.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that was the snowmobile parking lot discussion last spring, was the parking
If
fees.
we charge enough, we can pay for the liability insurance.
yeah, but, yeah,
But
I
it also
don't know what
changed,
it
like-
cost, but if you turn Forest Service that we have into commercial, then it goes up for,
Right.
it goes up for auction or however they do that. Yeah. So, yeah,
I think like, going back to your question about the improvements on it, is what I was trying to say is, so like with an IDL lease, when you make the improvements on the land, I don't think there's any verbiage about who reclaims it, but in the case of an IDL, there's usually a clause about they have to reimburse for some portion of those improvements. So like if they spend $40,000 on fencing in concrete or something along those effects, we may be helping.
that's true, and my other question
Unless we can
would-
get them to say that we're not.
If they take it out, that's the other thing, like I said, if they were reclaiming, who's taking all this stuff out of there? Who's paying to remove the quartz and the
Yeah.
vault toilet and all that? I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, as I was saying, I don't think they're talking about a vault toilet. They were just talking about a portable
A
one.
porta potty, so.
But no,
that'd be easy.
I do agree, like the fencing and the concrete, that's,
well, we might
Well, they
turn
went
it
away.
into phase 2 of the recycle center.
or basketball courts.
Basketball
Purpose.
court.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so,
I know, we could put a mountain bike trail through it.
Park.
Or tennis courts, or,
Tennis
you know,
courts?
An
Yeah.
outdoor recreation.
Hay
spot.
barn?
Yeah, and as I say, I mean, that potentially could jive with what we hope that land will eventually turn into, is we could repurpose that if they do abandon it. or the
Well, I think
club
it's a
disbands.
nice lead-in for employee housing.
Absolutely.
This kind of opens that up to continue on with it. That's what I like about the whole idea.
So I've been in communication with Central District Health, and we've got to provide them a footprint of what an initial plat would look like, because we have to test every lot in a plat.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to get them to waive off a $295 per lot fee. He said, alls we're doing right now is just testing to see if it's even appropriate for housing. But they said, well, we might allow you to skip every other lot. So
What's the
we're gonna
minimum,
go back and try and,
minimum size you required for a septic?
well, with central water, it'd be half an acre on a septic. But now they're just getting ready to pass 1 acre if it's well on septic. But I mean, a whole plan of that whole thing, it should be a centralized water system with individual septic, so a half an acre. But it goes smaller on some of the new stuff. So now I'm gonna have to work with, I'm trying to work with the housing trust to see if they would take the first 10 lots and put local housing on it. But it's pretty messy, but we're gonna end up.
So you would have to do, if you do 2 an acre, then you'd have to do 5 test holes.
Yeah.
That's about $1,100, $1,200.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very expensive, and then you gotta pay the excavator to go out and do it, so it's more than that, but. I mean, we need to take a look at it, we gotta figure out, we have to look and see if it's even.
Well, according to Jeff, it sounds like there's high water down there.
There is high water in certain areas.
Yeah.
This is up higher.
For deliberation.
I mean, if you look at that road that goes in, the tennis court area is down substantially from where this is. This is virgin soil.
You talked to Tom, what's his name?
Actually, I
White,
talked
yeah.
to his boss today, and I'll have to go up the food chain if we try and get something. I go to Russ Duke eventually.
Talk to Russ too, or I can help with that, if I can remember.
Let me just figure out what we're gonna do first, and what it looks like first, and I'll work on that this week.
Well, and even if it's a couple of thousand, it's worth it to find out if we can even do it. I think.
I agree.
We get out there, dig down in 2 feet, we get water, we're in trouble.
Wait till they resurface the other part of the airport.
What's that?
Get the rest of that.
From a long time ago when it was about this tall. Joy Sims, my gosh. Yeah. That goes back into 76, 77, 1978. And you're living out of Smiths Ferry, I take it?
Huh?
Are you living at Smiths Ferry now?
I'm down there.
Yeah, it's a nice area. We just found out today you guys aren't in a fire district?
No,
You ever thought about joining the fire district so you can have fire suppression?
My husband's a fireman EMT out of Cascade, so we paid something and now we're in some, I don't know exactly what it is, but he said we're good, so.
He says you're good, huh?
I don't know what
Okay.
that means, you know? Now, what is it?
A fire district?
No, I mean, what were you saying that we should be a part of?
A fire district?
I didn't do that.
Cascade Rural Fire District, you have to petition to get in. Kind of like if you want to be annexed into the city, that kind of a deal. But in your case, what would happen would be just raise your taxes and you still get the same of what you're getting now, basically, but. Yeah.
They said the guy said today that they were like contracting with certain people. So maybe they're paying the contract rate or something.
Yeah, I think we paid like $100 or something like that, and so the way I understood, which could totally be wrong, is that if there's a fire because we paid that, it would be at our house versus.
Yes.
Yeah, most everybody down there is not in a fire district.
Yeah.
So if you joined the fire district, do you know what your fire insurance would go down? And how much? Would it, you guys ought to check into that. I think you'd get a lot better fire insurance rates if you're in a district.
Yeah, oh yeah, because we just purchased the house a year ago and it was almost impossible to get any insurance on that house. Nobody wanted to insure it because it wasn't in the fire district, even knowing
Yeah.
that he was the fireman and all that.
And that's what we're seeing on the valley, on the perimeter, folks that build up in the timber, they're coming to them and said, we're not gonna give you insurance until you take all these trees out 100 feet back. It's like, well, that ruins the whole lot, but.
When I called the fire department, they told me that our house was covered in Smiths Ferry from the volunteer fire department and maybe dispatched from Clear Street.
So this is new to me, because when I called my insurance, they're like, as long as it's within so many miles, you're covered.
When did you buy your house?
2009.
Is that,
I just did this in the last
Hi.
4 months.
that fire truck is no longer in Clear Creek?
What's the procedure?
It's all in Cascade now.
Commissioner has, the chairman, will go ahead and call you in just a minute, and he'll start the open house.
I didn't realize it was.
Oh, but here we go. Okay, folks, you can settle down. We're gonna go on to our next agenda item, which is an action item. And we have a request from Smiths Ferry permanent residents to use Smiths Ferry Drive. I take it, sir, you're going to be the spokesman?
I am.
Could you please state your name?
My name is Joe Rogan, 9606 Packer John Road. And what I'd like to do, because I am from originally Scranton, Pennsylvania, I'm going to give you guys a letter that I'm going to read from. That way I won't be losing my way.
So Joe, I'm gonna interrupt
Yes.
you really quick. Doug, who was it that requested to be on the agenda?
I had 3 individuals reach out.
Okay, so we can do it just based on anything, taking action based on the way that it is titled.
I would consult with the prosecuting attorney, but I believe that the commissioners can, in fact, because it's listed, it's agended as an action item, as a request from Smith Ferry to have access to Smith Ferry Drive.
Is there anyone else in the audience that's going to speak today?
I'm sorry, Joe, I just needed to make sure we had the right person.
No? Okay. Well, we'll keep that in mind. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. First, I'll give you guys a copy of this letter.
If you give all us the letters, you won't have one to read.
Well, you might correct me if I screw up.
Okay.
Thank you. And I gotta get one for you, young lady.
Oh,
I'll give you yours and hand you another one. Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
No worries, I'll listen.
Okay, she's gonna listen. All right, like I said, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, so I'm gonna read this to you. We're the folks from Smith Ferry, the full-time residents, want to ask you for permission to use that road between 10 and 2 all days of the week. These residents, mostly 65 and older, a good many of us veterans, depend on Cascade and McCall for all the city services, from doctors, dentists, rehab services, pharmaceuticals, hardware, groceries, etc. Not having complete daily access causes a direct disruption to our lives, their lives, unnecessary under the circumstances being that Smith Ferry Road is contiguous to our community. Round Valley residents still maintain direct access to Cascade and McCall services. Granting them access would not be needed. The Route 55 work is sorely needed. However, the residents of Smiths Ferry are the only people in the state to be impacted daily. The stop and go traffic on Route 55 before and after 10 to 2 shutdowns on the road adds an additional hour or so to every trip to Cascade or McCall. This also happens on Fridays when the roads are open, stop and go traffic. Granting use access will go a long way to mitigate that impact. Logging trucks have the use of Packer John and Smiths Ferry Road between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And there is some discussion that dual use could cause safety issues. It's also interesting and somewhat perplexing that loggers, not residents, have priority. Logging truckers are just as careful as any other drivers, and frankly, because it's their living, more so, often using radios to ensure traffic will not interfere on the routes used on the mountain roads. Once drivers are told, the truck drivers, they could on occasion face oncoming traffic, they will adapt to the situation as they currently do up and down Packer John Road. To facilitate traffic, most of us who live in Smiths Ferry have had to back up and adjust our road position to allow logging trucks to pass on Packer John Road. It's not that difficult. The fix is easy. Add to your current list, and I believe most of the people on your current list are people with actual addresses on Smiths Ferry Road. The full-time families on the attached list. And a couple of people just showed up that wanted to be on the list that we weren't able to contact. So I'm going to give you that list in just a second. Okay? Is everybody here that wants to be on this list, on the list? Okay.
I wrote my name.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. All right. Are there questions? We just drove the road, and there are a couple places where it might be difficult, but I'm telling you, these truckers that we run into up and down Smith, Packer John Road have never had a problem with us as we go up to the top to do whatever we need to do. And they do have communications on radios, and I think that would facilitate the issue. Now, if you look at the numbers, there's only a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It's 20 people, families, that want to use that road. No, we're not all going to be on it at once. And like, I'm sure you guys, every day you're working on your house to do things, you'll want to go to Ace Hardware and get something if you're in the middle of a project. Or if you hurt yourself, you'd love to be able to just go up that road and get to Cascade and get fixed. So, any questions?
Well, this is a tough one, Joe, because the issue that happens, because we've found this out in the past, is if we let you guys start using it, the rest of the public sees cars going up and down there and they feel like they can do that. So the gatekeeper, the guy out down at the bottom, just says, tosses up his hand and says, forgets it. And we lose control of it.
Well, I have personal experience with this. Last week, both my wife and I are doing rehab. We thought, because if you remember, they had 2 Idaho Department of Transportation discussions on the computer. Both times they assured us that local residents will have access through that road. So my wife and I go to rehab, we're coming back and we're told that we can't make the trip. Well, this was like at 11 o'clock in the morning. We had to wait till 2 and then come through the road. Now, those people with that list, if the folks' names are on the list, both, and we tried it twice, their word is, no, you can't go, period. And they just have to stand by that and say that you're not allowed because your name's not on the list. We did. We didn't force the issue. So you have to rely on your traffic controllers, who you're paying good money to stand there and limit the number of people going up and down that road to keep people from going up there. I mean, that's what you pay them to do. Got a list?
Actually, the contractor pays them. The county doesn't pay them.
Okay, well, somebody's paying them.
We have done this in the past on High Valley, and we had some major collisions.
Well, the idea is this. There's only going to be a total of, I don't know how many you have on the Smiths Ferry Road list. You have those people.
I think there's 6.
Pardon me? All
6
right.
people that live above the barricade on
Okay.
Going over and
So
around.
that's 6 plus you'll have 25 people that can, not will, that can use it when they need to. That's what the issue is. No one else in the state is having the same kind of issue. That road is there. It's in our community. And I think if you're realistic in terms of, hey, we should be able to use that road. Loggers use it.
From the deal with the loggers, they came in and petitioned that because they can't make that second trip to the mill in Grangeville or at Tamarack before they run out of daylight.
Okay, well,
and it's a major economic thing to them.
Well, we can't make our trip to rehab.
How would you guys feel about only being able to come over at southbound? You can't go over at northbound.
Why would that mitigate that?
Because I don't want all you guys facing all those empty trucks when it gets wet and muddy and slick. That's when we're going to have the issues.
when it starts snowing, when it starts snowing, nobody's gonna use it anyway.
Yeah.
We're only talking about another 3 weeks probably for now.
Well,
and then
this is,
back in the spring.
but this is also for next year and the probably. the
Exactly.
following year.
Right, but the problem is, you make a physical therapy appointment now, we're limited to making appointments basically after 3 o'clock.
So
To get into Cascade to do an appointment and get back home.
I think the issue is, I think you're saying that these truckers aren't safe drivers. And I believe they're safer than most of us. They take more into consideration every single day than most drivers ever do, because those are the kinds of roads they are driving on every single day. And you're not talking about, we're talking about 25 vehicles. I doubt every one of us will make anywhere near 2 trips a week, because most, again, the population there is in the 60s for the most part. Now, there's a couple of youngins, but there's some people who are really older. So, and I appreciate that there could be a what if, but that's not how you run your life. You don't do what ifs to prevent people from running your life. I mean, you got to have the faith in the drivers to do it the right way. These drivers, I mean, I have traffic every day on my road, both ways by these truckers. And you wouldn't believe they do it right.
Why don't they turn it around at the bridge instead of driving Perpetual, go all the way to Ferry Drive? They have no reason to go across the bridge, and nobody's gonna see anybody going up and down Ferry Drive, except for people do.
Right.
If you can't go across the river, there's no problem.
The only way I would feel very comfortable doing this is if you guys were going from town back out home, southbound, the same direction as the logging trucks. But to put all you guys up going into that logging truck traffic would be a stupid decision.
You're making the assumption that we're all going to do it. The reality is, how many times do you go to Cascade a week?
I don't usually, but my husband is a disabled vet and has to go to therapy twice a week. Plus, like I said, he's an EMT firefighter. And so when he gets a call and the road is closed, they won't even let him go over Smith's Ferry to get to whatever accident or, thing that is going on. So he can't even get to an emergency. And so that's why we're here. Like I said, I don't usually go all the time. I work 6-7 days a week at the Cougar Mountain Lodge, so I'm always there. But it's just with him not having access to help out another family in an emergency situation. So that's why I'm here for sure.
How often do you guys use it?
Well, I use it, I'm Jim Goodine, Jim's Classic Auto, and licensed car dealer, licensed on insurance. I buy, sell cars and repair cars there, which I got permission from the county to do. But like my parts come in here in Cascade at 11 o'clock. So if I call in, Kathy, your part comes in 11 o'clock, I need to go both ways to get that, part and get this guy back on the road, or, and we only use it in emergencies. We use it as really needed in that aspect. My son has a window cleaning business also, and most of the 90% of his business is north, Paul, and that aspect. So his time frame, he gets up early in the morning, but when he comes back, it's the same situation, It's late for 2 hours. Yeah. So that's how we go through as early as possible, just to get through it.
Yeah.
But we're all combining. I mean, we're doing everything we can in Smith Ferry. We only use that road as needed, and I've been using that road for 18 years. And I understand, and I talked with Jeff this weekend, it definitely needs to be graded and repaired, even if they're using it part-time, because it's a mess right now.
Well, the loggers are supposed to be watering it and grading it.
Yeah,
Right.
I heard that story.
They're not doing that?
No.
So, I mean, the key is the word as needed. Most of us do it as needed. We don't travel back and forth to Cascade and McCall to fish. I mean, let's be real. We do it as needed. We have our doctor's appointments. Again, this is a rehab kind of thing, and it's not a peripheral thing. It's a, hey, this has to happen. I'm just saying the people there need, not want. You look at some of those traffic jams over there, it's phenomenal. So anyway.
We have to go through the same rules as you guys do too. We have to wait until it opens up at 2. If
I
you're stuck on
understand
one
that,
side
but
or the other, that's
what,
the
do
way
you
it
live
is.
down there? Do you live in the Smiths Ferry?
No.
Okay, where do you live?
I live near Clear Creek.
There, Clear Creek. And you?
I live near Lake Fork.
Where?
Lake Fork.
Lake Fork. And you? Well, you're not going to vote. You're going to take notes. Where do you live?
I live in Donley.
In Donnelly and McCall. So you guys have pretty good access to everything on this side of the bridge. We don't. We need it. I mean, that's not we'd like to. And just like, I'm sorry, I can't think of your name. These two have, just like the truckers, they have a need to be here because it's what they do for a living. So that's what I'd like. That's what we'd like you to
throw out a
understand.
quick comparison for you. So we went through this project last year on Warren Wagon Road in McCall.
Pardon me?
I said I could throw a quick comparison out for you.
Okay.
So last year we did this project on Warren Wagon Road that shut down the road up there for the same duration. Actually, it was longer duration. It was from like 8 to 4. And they had a window open in the middle of the day where people could go back and forth, but it closed down access to almost, probably 2/3 of the homes on Warren Wagon Road, which was a substantial amount. And we had actually almost a similar request from folks that were the last house out on that side of the lake. They were trying to get back in for a hip rehab. And there was no feasible way to have them have that during that time. So
Well, this is feasible.
I'm only throwing
Yeah.
that out there for a point of reference.
Well,
This
the
a similar
reality is
request
this is
that we go through
feasible.
north end.
The road's there, the road's usable. If we have to tell the truckers, hey, be a little more careful because you have a few more cars on it, that's great. What you're talking about is a non-feasible situation where it was not possible to work, because that guy might have to stay in a hotel for the duration of it. Our folks need to live their lives as best they can with the disruption.
I have a, I guess, question or comment. So they do have flaggers the whole time that the road is closed on one end and the other. They both have radios. So isn't it feasible that, like, if you're coming from Smiths Ferry going over, they're gonna know who already went through and let the flagger know, hey, we have 2 cars, 3 cars coming, and when those 3 cars get off the road, then they let, just like they're doing with the light. You know what I mean? So during that time, they can be radioing back and forth. Hey, I got a logger and 2 vehicles, they're coming south. When they come out, hey, I got 3 vehicles going north. Wait till they get out and then go back and forth like that. Not that there's gonna be that much traffic on it, but I mean, it would be kind of the same thing that they're doing now, radioing back and forth on the 15 or the 55, and that seems to be working just fine.
What's the total? I apologize because I have not been on this road before, but what's the total length from the closure to the closure?
Well, it's probably about 3 or 4 miles.
That's the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
We snowmobile it in the winter. I mean, it's that kind of place.
So my question is, you guys all drive this road on a regular basis?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I drove.
We drove.
Yeah. When we have the doctor's appointments and things like that, and my husband has to go to here for the VA, I mean, now we can't, we have to wait, and then we have to do it on Friday if there's, enough.
I guess what I'm trying to find out is how familiar are you with this road?
Oh,
very.
yeah, we just drove it. It's okay. I mean, there are probably a few places where you'd have to stop and maybe back up a little bit and get out of the way for the truck to come down. And that's about it, because we just drove it. I mean, it was like, hey, yeah, you're right, it's bumpier than hell, but and it needs a little bit of scraping and leveling out.
Okay, but Joe, I want you to think about this when it starts raining and snowing and getting soft. That's when the concern is, for me.
Well,
you're not gonna be able to stop, and neither is that logging truck.
I don't know a person up there who doesn't have a 4-wheel drive, because we have been driving on dirt roads up there forever.
But by the time the snow is gonna hit and all the rain and as much, like the road is gonna be open on the 55, so we won't even have to
That's
use
right.
that. So
Yeah.
it's just literally for like.
Is there any way you guys can
And the
adjust your therapy to 8 o'clock in the morning and get there
Yeah,
at
the
8?
problem though is when we get done, it's after 10.
Yeah, I mean,
You're in therapy for 2 hours?
Yeah, like by the time you drive in and do your therapy and get back, it's right at 10 o'clock and they wouldn't let us go home. We had to wait here till 2 o'clock to go home.
yeah, the thing is, using the road's that big a deal. Yes, there could be some issues, but I mean, we're all sitting here talking and not a person here has a mask on. So we are accepting the risk of this COVID thing because we realize that we're going to have to live our lives. Living our lives goes to accepting risk. And I really don't see it as that big a risk, especially if we tell the truckers, hey, use the same kind of safety standards you use coming down the other part of our Smiths Ferry Road, Packer John Road. And they do. I'm not sure if they've had an accident there that I'm aware of.
As I understand it, the closure of the single lane will be, they're gonna have both lanes open on the 15th of November?
Yes.
What are we talking, 3 weeks?
Yeah, and then in the
Once
spring,
it starts snowing, they don't plow that road anyway, so you can't get
But
there.
we're talking all the next year and possibly some in the next year as well.
exactly,
Next
2.5
summer-
years.
Next summer, I'm telling you guys, if people see you going over that road, we'll lose
Well, they're
control.
not gonna see us because they don't stop.
Oh, yeah, they'll see you.
They don't stop at Packer John and Smith
So-
Ferry, they
so
stop way over by.
What you're
They'll see.
saying is, because if you think about what you're saying, you take your road person, because you have two. You have one at the 55, and then you have one at Smiths Ferry Road. You have the person at 55 stop people from going down Smiths Ferry Road.
They
And
have it.
yeah,
They have it.
So because working at Smiths Ferry and we were seeing so many people go back there, I suggested to one of their supervisors, hey, why don't you put somebody on this side of the bridge so they don't get that far and go onto people's properties and start, upsetting the locals. So they do have a flagger here and they have another flagger back there and then one on the other side. So if you have your ID that has your address on it, you're on the list, they're not gonna let anybody go past that bridge to even go back. The people that are sitting there stopped are gonna think, oh, they just live back
yeah.
there. Because they're not gonna be able to see you go all the way around the mountain and then you're gonna start going up Smiths Ferry.
Yeah, so I would suggest that you emphasize to the controllers at all three of those spots that no one goes through there unless they're on the list. Because they have demonstrated to me they can do that. All they need to do is be forceful and do it. And that's what you're talking about is, hey, they just simply, if they throw up their hands, the contractor is in default of his contract. And if they
I
start.
just don't want to see one of you guys killed or pushed off the side of that road by a logger truck. I would feel terrible. if that happened.
I don't think that's gonna happen,
That's
sir.
not gonna happen because 10-1 says all of us sitting in here know that road better than you guys do.
Exactly.
And we're probably talking, on an average day, maybe in that 4-hour period, all of us over there might put 4 or 5 vehicles might go over that hill. I mean, it's not like we're gonna have a free-for-all there.
Yeah.
And we all know that road, what condition is, where the corners are, where the springs are, washing crap out. Like I said, we probably know more of that than you guys do. And we're probably the safest people who drive on that road. And, the guys at each end, when they see us going through there, all that guard's gotta say is, they live here, all right? And the other people turn around, we know who they all are.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're driving 5 or 6 cars in 4 hours, it's like, geez,
How would you,
We know loggers go over that, if other trucks and trailers been going over that hill like crazy, and we've been avoiding them all these years, I don't think we have a massive accident history on Smith Ferry Road. So it's, to me, it's kind of common sense. We understand it. We're not gonna cause any problems there, and we'll be shut down.
What do you wanna do?
I have to agree with these people, I really do. I've been asking all the time, because we're only shutting it for 4 hours. We're gonna let them go at 8 o'clock in the morning or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon over the same road. So we're shutting it down to them for 4 hours, but they drive this road all the time. So to me, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's a road that's open and it's in their community.
Jeff, you want to add anything? Jeff is our road supervisor.
And he does a hell of a job.
I feel for these people, like you said, they probably know the road better than me. There's where that road is now, There's a lot of people using that when there's no flagger there to stop them. So I guarantee that. We have no crash history on that road whatsoever. I mean,
And they're accepting responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna go rescue them, you know, I mean, they are accepting responsibility for their actions by taking that road, so.
yeah, it just goes back on the road's closed, driving at your own risk. I mean, without putting gates up, which I'm totally against. I wouldn't have a problem with them using it.
I guess my only issue is I don't have a problem using it when you're coming from town back home. But to go against that truck traffic, I think we're just asking for serious trouble.
But what about, like I said,
Well, like
with
she
the
said,
flagger, with the
I
radio?
got the radio and cell phone.
They talk to each other all the time on them.
You think that'll work?
It would work. If
Okay.
flaggers do their job.
So what we would need then is a list of the cars and the people.
Well, we got the address, everybody has their address on their driver's license.
So Jeff, how would that work? We get it to you and then take it to them?
I would just email it to Alex D-Duck, he's the one in charge down there.
Okay.
He's been really easy to work with, getting logging truck information to him.
What time of day are most of those logging trucks going through? I mean, they're trying to get back down for like a midday pickup.
I don't really see them all bunched up. Once in a while, I see two of them heading south. It's like, okay, there goes two. And then, I don't know, I'm not out on the highway all day, but it's not like there's all 8 of them all at once.
And they're cutting down on the logging now anyway.
Well, they're trying to finish off a salvage sale. They got that salvage sale down south that they're trying to get those logs out of here before it snows.
Down there, and we see very few logging trucks over empty coming through there.
Yeah, right before it was an absolute
Yeah.
chaos.
It's a grading road, but we know so far, from this year, so.
Well, Jeff, do you have that Alex's email with you? People are gonna need that, and it sounds to me like we need to contact the logging truck drivers and have them grade the road. That's gonna get really rough.
That was part of our agreement with them.
Yeah, they haven't done
This is only our second week, I think.
We're supposed to go down there today and tomorrow, take care of our roads down there pretty quick. We've been arguing with them for the longest time. Brown Brothers plow Packard down the road all the way through, did a nice job, except the typical logging thing Jeff said, they take all the gravel and plow it to the side of the road where we gotta drag it back on.
Dave, any comments?
I'm in full support of them gaining access. The problem we've had down there is when people, number one, the flaggers just letting everybody and anybody go over that road. And then the people that are gonna blow by those flaggers and give them an argument, we have 2 deputies working and we're gonna have to be down there refereeing who was able to go through and who wasn't. And the person blew through on the flagger, we're gonna get calls on that all summer long. But I mean, there's a fix for this. It's just we gotta figure it out. But we have no problem with people going through there that live up there. It's a matter of how do we referee the people that are giving those flaggers a bunch of problems, because we're gonna get radio calls to go down there and handle that situation. So I don't know, I was sitting here thinking, what if we push that flagger out to Cougar Mountain Lodge and put no residents, and that way they don't see these people going up that road. Get a list of who lives in that whole area. I don't know how many people are back there, but you guys would know, probably 40, 50 people, I don't know.
Well, just today, we were working on a property at Ray Creek, right behind the lodge there. We saw a place from Montana, Oregon, and who else, but they're all just following.
Yeah.
And so trying to get through there, so it's the other thing, there's no road that can go up.
Yeah.
And the same thing on Round Valley is push, it'd be hard, but I was thinking push the flagger out to 55, but then they'd find their way back around and come in through the other way. But if you can kind of hide that little route that just this group of people are taking, that probably would solve the combat with the flagger.
Yeah, if they pull the flagger out to this side of the bridge, which is directly like by Cougar Mountain Lodge, they won't see you going down over the bridge around, and then you get to the, the blockade, and then you go up, they can't even see you going up right there.
Google Maps is pushing them over that.
Yeah, that's what happened, is they're Googling it all.
And that's what we tried to go up there a week or so ago to do some enforcement. And one of the ladies we stopped up there was from Pennsylvania, missing a flight out of Boise. had a complaint that she missed her flight, but she was told by the flagger to go ahead and go through. Well, little did the flagger know, she knows there was a deputy up there waiting for people coming through that didn't live there. And, but we can't enforce it because the flagger told her to go ahead on through. So we're kind of putting that predicament of, I just pulled everybody off there until we can figure this out.
Can the flagger just not ask for people's driver's licenses? I mean, there's only so many roads up there.
No, yeah, absolutely, but that's, you always got those people that are gonna sit there and, you know, and.
Most of the flaggers know us.
Yeah, they know
Sure,
us.
yeah,
Sure,
sure.
we're there, we're local, we stop, say hi, whatever it is, bring them a glass of water.
And it'll get to that point with you, and then they'll know to turn those cars around, so I'm just thinking if we can hide where they're going up that road.
Which would be easy.
Well, we can try it and see how it works this fall. If it doesn't work, next
Okay.
year it might be a different story.
All right, well, let's revisit it in the spring, but let's assume that we're gonna keep going. I'll give you a copy of this.
Sure, or Jeff.
I gave Jeff a copy. I'll give
Okay.
you one too. All right,
And Jeff, did you give him the email?
so you guys have to vote.
Doug has the email. Yeah, we'll vote.
All right.
Does that copy have the written addings on it too?
Handwritten about 4 of them.
We knew this was gonna be an issue when we.
Yeah, I bet you did.
We knew that there was gonna be a lot of
Well,
problems
yeah,
for the next 2 years.
Opening date in the spring
March 15th.
will be drivable until April.
Yeah, exactly, April, May.
yeah, there's gonna be snow up there.
You don't know that. We might not get any snow this winter.
You haven't looked at the forecast.
I was gonna say, old farmers.
We're gonna have some on Sunday.
Yeah. All right, what's your preference? We need a motion?
I would like to just add that if we could get Jeff to contact him and say, you know, maybe the radio contact would be a great thing, or cell phone, or wherever you said between the two ends. I think if we do have trucks coming down, I mean, I think going into the time frame of the weather that we are looking at, it's just gonna get more and more difficult for somebody to stop coming downhill. So that'd be great. And I'm happy to see this go through as long as we can try to do that.
We'll try it and see, and you guys remind your neighbors, the other folks on this list, that this is kind of a test, because I don't want to get anybody killed.
Yeah, we
Just
agree with
because
that.
you're in a hurry,
Neither do we.
that just doesn't work, just because you're in a hurry.
Where's our lawyer? We go.
She's in the back
From a
corner.
liability standpoint, we're not giving those other people that are violating the closure
Yeah.
authorization to use the road. So
Exactly,
we want to make sure we're covering the county.
exactly. We're doing full-time residents only, period.
And we will put that in our motion maybe for the camera.
Yeah, because on the weekend, you can use the highway.
Yeah.
Find open Friday through Sunday.
Okay, I like that idea, the full-time residents. So I'd entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion that we allow the Smiths Ferry permanent residents to do Smith Ferry Drive as long as they're on the list, and we will try to improve communication on both ends of the closure.
Thank you.
Oh,
Second that.
Who did second it? Oh,
quick question, there was a question raised about,
Somebody said full-time residents, we're accept, anybody that owns property up there is gonna be allowed to go up there, right?
No.
And if they're part-time?
Well,
If they're
that's a
on your
tough
list,
That list is a list of full-time residents.
Yeah.
We did that
I think
because,
So what if we get somebody that owns a piece of property up there between 10 and 2 that wants to go up there, and, I mean, it doesn't,
well,
That wants to go to their
Our-
home or
yeah.
over Smiths Ferry Drive.
over Smiths Ferry Drive.
It probably wouldn't be that happen, because that season is basically done, and most of the traffic of our part-time people is coming from south. We're not gonna have a lot of north people during that 4-hour period. I don't believe that's worth concern.
Okay.
But if there is a problem with it, you know, they can basically contact you two and say, hey, they have a special need. Right now, it's all south.
Beard about.
yeah, but it's a good question.
I know what
We
he's,
visit this in the spring.
I know what he's talking about, because when we were denied coming home, when we finally got home, there was a guy there who had just bought 60 acres up there and was not allowed to go up there and look at it.
On Smiths Ferry Road.
Welcome to Idaho.
Yep,
Welcome to Idaho.
exactly.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Moved and seconded.
Hold on 1 second. Can
Sure.
we amend that motion to put homeowners instead of full-time residents?
Full-time residents.
Well, she's saying homeowners, if they have a house, whether they're in it full-time or not.
I believe in the motion that I made, I did not say permanent, I just said residents.
Yes.
Did you record it there?
I have allow full-time
Okay.
permanent residents.
I'm happy to amend that.
2 residents.
2 residents.
Take the
I
full
second
time
the
out, Doug.
amendment.
Okay,
And then we're gonna come back and revisit it in April or May or whenever the road opens again, you guys, because we'll see how it goes.
okay.
My apologies, Commissioners. What I heard though, is what I captured in the original motion is Commissioner Bingman made a motion. It's been amended to allow residents of Smiths Ferry access to Smiths Ferry Drive if they are on the list that was provided by Mr. Joe Rogan. With this amendment, it's possible that there are individuals that are not on this list.
Yep, a lot of them.
We still want to see, I think, the list being utilized.
Yeah, the list
Need
is,
to contact
the list is what they're
Payette.
using now for those people. And you're just gonna add that to the list you have, correct? The list that we have?
Yeah, you already have a list of Smiths Ferry Drive residents.
Do you want me to add to it?
Yeah, no, add those to that list. We didn't put any Smiths Ferry Drive.
I'll scan this in.
Joe, would you be willing to be the front man on this is so that if somebody does live in that area that's not on the list, they can contact you
And yell at me.
and they can yell at you?
Yes, sir.
But what about residents that come up, put their camper on their lot in the summertime and have an address in Phoenix, Arizona?
They're not residents. They're property owners.
Okay.
If they have a residency in Valley County, in Smiths Ferry subdivision, that's,
Gotcha.
that's where they live.
Everybody good?
Yeah, I think this limits the number of people on the road, safety purposes, and gives those people who need it the ability to use it because they live there full time. Thank you.
And we'd ask you guys, try and work around it. I mean,
Yeah.
try and not use it
Yep.
unless you need to. Maybe
Yeah, but
emergency
most-
access.
Most people do that. That's, the issue is when they need it, they don't want to be sitting there getting yelled at by the guy and then having the sheriff guy come down and talk to him because he broke his finger and he can't get up the road. So anyway.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank
Okay,
you,
the ball
sir.
is in your court.
Do you have my phone number if you want to?
We need to get this email from Doug, or this guy that runs the flaggers, runs the project,
Okay.
and you'll email him that list.
Joe, make sure your phone number is on it.
Let me
Thank
get
you so much.
Let me get you my information so you can email me.
Yeah, come on up, Joe.
All right.
Yeah, just write it on your list.
You got my-
You're not even on this list. You're not on this list. I don't see your name on here, sir. You can't go over.
Elizabeth, Rogan. Joe.
There we go.
Thanks, guys.
Cell phone?
Oh, 208
Good meeting you.
412 5070. Email Joe Rogan at AOL.com.
I know, like, can't we just kick this back at ITD and be like, you guys figure this out?
That's an old one.
Yeah, it is.
ROGAN.
And they didn't ask us?
No.
Not in the same way.
This is the first time you heard about this project.
They took a piece of the boat
I heard
out.
about it from a flyer that
10 weeks later, actually it's 14 weeks now.
I was gonna say, so, that's exactly, so I was less than a month before they started, I think. So they've been talking about this, they raised the money for it. We've heard that there might be some changes or some